Chapter 2238. Bang! A powerful explosion suddenly appeared on the upper left shell of the Leviathan. Then a figure flew out at high speed with his back bent. It was Lord Fushi, the King of Heaven of the Empire. The King of Sword was still killing, purifying the hero. Seeing something flying at high speed, he shook the chain on his arm without thinking. This kind of shaking would cause the end of the chain to shake greatly. Senior sister, Yulia, naturally took the brunt of it and put on the painful mask again. The main reason was that she was shaken too much, and it was as uncomfortable as motion sickness. Instantly, the shaking chain rolled up the King of Heaven to the front of the King of Sword, Dijuan. The two kings of the Empire looked at each other. The King of Heaven blinked his eyes and quickly waved his hand, greeting with a smile. "Hi, why are you?" The King of Sword frowned. "I met a troublesome guy." The King of Heaven looked innocent. The King of Sword frowned again, and then he turned around and blocked with his light sword. Behind him, a huge dark red steam condensed into a terrifying shadow like an azure dragon. The light sword blocked the dark red azure dragon. Dijuan took a deep breath and pushed the light sword with all his strength. The sword light was extinguished, and the dark red steam appeared. Emperor Kai appeared. "You really took off the dragon bone." The King of Sword looked a little serious. Emperor Kai was floating in the air. He didn't have the ability to fly, but he could kick the air at a terrifying speed. In short, he could do a movement in the air that could stop as long as he had legs. "How's the power?" Emperor Kai showed his shiny white teeth. The King of Sword said seriously, "It's not as fierce as before. You become weak, Kai." Emperor Kai said indifferently, "You should be like me, starving for hundreds of years before saying this. I'm going to kick you two to death first, and then kick that young, glorious son to death." "Thank you, everyone, for coming." The voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, and it seemed to be an unexpected coincidence. The main character has appeared. Kai Huang slowly let out a sigh of relief. He actually gave up on attacking the two king generals. The dark red steam on his body exploded. This legendary hero's skin had actually turned crimson red at this moment. The Sword King immediately snorted coldly. No matter what, allowing this criminal to attack the imperial family, and ignoring the imperial crown prince at that, was the greatest dereliction of duty. With a wave of his lightsaber, the King of Swords would still directly strike from behind Kai Huang. They were not young anymore, so naturally they would not talk about martial ethics. The sword light flashed, and the two dead heroes who couldn't kill the two heroes directly rushed toward the sword light like moths to a flame. The sword light was broken, and the two dead heroes also disappeared instantly. Emperor Jun and Fushi couldn't help but frown at the same time. After the two heroes disappeared, another figure stood in front of them again. Surprisingly, it was the demonic young man who had attracted a large number of hero deaths. He was wearing a strange and restrained outfit. "Daphne, no, Dasher," Yulia whispered at this moment. She remembered the young man's appearance at this moment. He was the older brother of the pair of siblings that she had met when she first arrived at the Holy Light Kingdom. However, looking at the demonic young man, Dasher's strange outfit and the tattoo on his lower abdomen, Yulia couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, the boss knows how to play. "Get out of the way." The King of Swords didn't care who was blocking the way and directly shouted coldly. However, the demonic young man's eyes were hollow. He just raised his hand and held a magic wand. He waved the magic wand, and it instantly turned into a long black stick. At this moment, the demonic young man actually took out a note to fight. "Leave this guy to me." The King of Swords pinched up his sleeves and said with a generous smile, "I'll bite the hard bone. After all, we are brothers who will be buried in the same cave in the future." However, Emperor Jun took a deep look at Fushi and then nodded. He said indifferently, "Be careful. There is something wrong with this guy. It seems that he has the support of the glorious sun. He is indeed a hard bone." The King of Swords blinked. "Huh, is that so?" At this moment, without waiting for the King of Swords' response, Emperor Jun directly pulled the chain and pulled Yulia in front of him. He looked straight at her and said, "The crown prince is right there. Since you said that you are the candidate of the crown princess, you must be able to stop the crown prince, right? If I say no, will I be cut in half?" "Of course." The senior sister had to pat her chest and said shamelessly, "I'm almost in the shape of your crown prince. What do you think?" "Very good." Emperor June nodded. Then, "I'm sorry to offend you again." Yulia blinked subconsciously as if something was wrong. She felt that the world was spinning around her. The King of Swords swung her up and spun her around hundreds of times. Under the effect of the horrifying centrifugal force, Yulia was sent flying like a cannonball. "Help! Help!" The demonic young man wanted to chase after her, but he had already waved his long black stick. However, a figure stood on one end of the stick with ease. "Little brother, your opponent is me." The King of Swords smiled like a spring breeze. The demonic young man looked stupefied and didn't move at all. The King of Swords blinked and said, "Little brother, we are just workers. You don't have to fight with your life. Let's pretend. I will first use the black tiger steel's heart, and then you will use the black tiger steel's heart. Let's go to the clouds and fight." The demonic young man was expressionless, but the long black stick in his hand suddenly smashed down. The King of Swords' eyes narrowed, and he crossed his hands to block the long black stick. However, the moment he blocked the stick, his face changed slightly. His hands were almost broken. The demonic young man in front of him was glowing with a huge gray airflow. The dead heroes turned into power and directly entered the demonic young man's body. Facing the demonic young man whose power was increasing crazily, the King of Swords couldn't help but scratch his cheek and murmur, "I kind of want to change places with Emperor June." In the end, the demonic young man who had absorbed the power of hundreds of dead heroes calmed down. Only the long black stick in his hand had lightning flowing around it from time to time. Fushi exhaled slowly and said indifferently, "Let's laze around on the clouds." A cross-shaped weapon suddenly appeared under Fushi's feet. At the same time, a huge light pattern in the shape of the 8 trigrams spread out instantly. 10 directions. Change. On the battlefield, the King of Swords and the demonic young man disappeared instantly. Azure Dragon. The dark red azure dragon swooped down as if it was going to swallow the human monument directly. "The new glorious sun. Let me see your ability." Da-da-da-da. Captain J looked up and saw the azure dragon descending. However, he calmly took out a magic wand. When the azure dragon came, the magic wand instantly touched the azure dragon. In a split second, starting from the head, the azure dragon turned into a blossoming flower. Emperor Kai landed on the ground from the blossoming flower with a dumbfounded look on his face. "How could your glorious sun power?" Captain shook his head gently. At the same time, a human cannonball instantly hit the flat surface of a human monument. Senior, Yulia felt that her bones were broken. After falling to the ground, she rolled all the way to the feet of Captain, and then she collapsed with her arms and legs spread out. Before Senior, Yulia could catch her breath, a light flashed, and the King of Swords had already set foot on the human monument. Captain J looked at the chain connecting the two of them. He was a little surprised and frowned slightly. The King of Swords said seriously, "Your Highness, this woman said that she's your concubine candidate. I can't be sure, so I can only bring her with me temporarily. I didn't mean to offend her, and the chain is long enough, so this lady's physiological activities are not affected." On the side, Kai Huang couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He actually felt a desire to live from this Sword King general. "My concubine candidate. Where is she?" Captain J looked at senior sister, Yulia, who had just caught her breath, and asked curiously, "When did this happen?" Senior J hugged his thigh with tears and snot, and she said pitifully, "I'm already a member of your circus. You have to take responsibility. Have you forgotten? Last time in Count Decree's airship study, I was almost hit by your hand. Isn't that enough?" Captain J shook his head and said coldly, "You and Daphne came from the same place, right?" Senior Yulia's expression changed slightly, but she calmed down. Captain J shook his head again and said indifferently, "Fine, the royal family has found too many so-called concubine candidates for me. It doesn't make a difference if there is one more or one less. You can stand for now. It's about to start." What the F asterisk CK? Senior, Yulia still couldn't react. Her mind was filled with Captain J's words. Did he decide so hastily? "Your Highness, please stop this meaningless behavior," the King of Swords said loudly. "Now that Leviathan is out of control and the Holy Land is about to be destroyed. Your Highness, please calm this matter." Captain J shook his head and said, "It's not that Leviathan is out of control, it's just that it's not under your control. You can find a person who activated Leviathan." "Your Highness, you mean Fushi?" The King of Swords couldn't help but frown. Captain didn't answer. He just walked straight to the center of the monument platform. A beam of light appeared, and 3 figures suddenly emerged from the ground in the center of the monument platform. They were Prince Desolate and Princess Angelique, who were kidnapped. After Prince Desolate appeared, he looked around curiously, especially Princess Angelique, who was next to him. Prince Desolate was even more focused on observing her. Angelique was currently dressed like a bunny girl. She was biting her lips and crossing her arms in front of her chest with an angry expression on her face. "Big news. I didn't expect that Sister Huang Angelique, who has always been serious, is actually such a person." Prince Desolate widened his eyes in disbelief and said with a smile, "3 times? No, I'll kill you 10 times. Princess Angelique squeezed out a hateful voice from her throat. Prince Desolate clicked his tongue as if he hadn't had enough. He said, "I think it's worth it to kill you a few more times, sister." "Damn it." Princess Angelique gritted her teeth and glared at the King of Swords in front of her. She said coldly, "Emperor Jun, why are you still standing there? Do you want me to disgrace the royal family?" The King of Swords hesitated for a moment and said that he couldn't do anything for the time being. He smiled bitterly and said, "I'm sorry, Your Highness Angelique. Crown Prince's godless field has been activated." At this moment, an overwhelming number of airships appeared around the human monument. It was likely that all the airships in the Holy Land had moved here. On Leviathan, the knights were still fighting against some heroes, but Commander Bismack left the battlefield halfway and issued an order as a temporary commander, summoning all the defense forces in the Holy Land. "I'm Bismack. Strange bandit clown. You have nowhere to run. Just surrender." The voice of Bismack, the former commander of the Royal Knights, echoed in the air. He was standing on one of the airships, wearing a military uniform and a stern face. He shouted loudly, "Give up this place and release the prince, and the princess. Otherwise, I'll have to punish you." His voice reverberated in the air. Hundreds and thousands of airships were approaching step by step. The Annihilator on the airships had been activated. It seemed like they were going to fight a war. Princess Angelique was stunned. Prince Desolate couldn't help but open his mouth. The King of Swords frowned and didn't say anything. Emperor Kai rubbed his chin and looked at Emperor Jun curiously. He asked, "Kid, what kind of idiot commander is this? Don't tell me he doesn't know the identity of the strange thief clown all this time?" Emperor Jun heaved a sigh of relief. Bismack is a bit prideful, and no one took the initiative to tell him. Emperor Kai couldn't help but open his mouth. What a pitiful child. Commander J shook his head and said calmly, "It doesn't matter. I think it's good to have more spectators." Commander J waved the magic wand in his hand. Prince Desolate and Princess Angelique's bodies floated up at the same time. Then, 2 huge wooden barrels suddenly appeared and covered the 2 of them, leaving only their heads exposed. "Isn't this?" Senior, Yulia opened her mouth in shock. "Isn't this thing used by the circus to perform sword magic?" Captain J held a long and thin sword and took the lead to arrive in front of Prince Desolate. End of this chapter. Chapter 2239. Report. Princess Angelique and Prince Desolate have been found. On the airship, Commander Bismack's expression turned solemn when he heard the report from his subordinate. He quickly took over the monitor from his subordinate and watched everything on the human monument. He saw that the strange thief clown who had humiliated him for his entire life was walking toward Prince Desolate with a sword in his hand. Commander Bismack's expression changed drastically. Mr. Emperor June is also on the airship. Why didn't he move? What happened on the airship? Sir, we can't wait any longer. Commander Bismack gritted his teeth and ordered, "Mobile troop, land immediately." There were long-range cannons on the airship, but how could they fire at the human monument? The thin and long sharp sword knocked on the drum-shaped wooden barrel lightly, proving its hardness. In the wooden barrel, Prince Desolate looked like a steamed person with only his head above the water. At this moment, he was curiously watching Commander J's every move. There seems to be no mechanism in this wooden barrel, Prince Desolate said in confusion. It's against the rules to perform this magic trick with my immortal body. However, Commander didn't care. The thin and long sharp sword in his hand directly pierced into one of the holes in the wooden barrel. Prince Desolate was stunned at first, and then his eyes widened slightly. The sharp sword slowly pierced through the other end of the wooden barrel. There was a trace of crimson color on the tip of the sword blood. "You're serious?" Prince Desolate exclaimed in disbelief. Then he spat out a mouthful of blood. Commander J still didn't speak. Like a magic trick, another long sword of the same style appeared in his hand. Then he slowly pierced it into the other hole in the wooden barrel. Prince Desolate's face twitched a few times. This kind of instinctive twitch caused by the pain in his body was obviously impossible to act out. The sword might have pierced into his lungs or other organs and then penetrated his body bit by bit. This kind of pain was obviously more torturous than piercing through his body with a single strike. After the third strike, Prince Desolate spat out another mouthful of blood. A scream sounded. It was the first time that Prince Desolate made such a tragic scream since he appeared. "It hurts. So painful. I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing anymore. Ouch, 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 ouch." In just a short period of time, Commander J had already inserted 3 sharp swords into the barrel. Only then did he stop. Looking at Prince Desolate's pale face, Commander J turned to look at the other wooden barrel beside him. Here, Princess Angelique's expression was uncertain. She subconsciously met Captain J's gaze, and her lips moved slightly. Captain J said indifferently, "He can't be killed because the method is wrong. Angie, if we keep the weapon in his body, he will only wander between life and death. If you really want to torture him, what you did in the past was too petty." Angelique was obviously a nickname, but Princess Angelique was clearly not satisfied with it. Because Commander J had once again inserted the 4th sword into Prince Desolate's barrel, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th sword. Some kind of mysterious power was constantly recovering Prince Desolate from the state of death. However, just as Commander said, the weapon stayed in his body, making the revived Prince Desolate immediately face death again, wandering between life and death, reincarnating in the calm after the screams and death. "I saw that you will die, and you will die very miserably." Suddenly, the words that the Witch of Turbidity once said rang in Senior Yulia's ears. She looked at this performance in a daze and couldn't help but murmur absent-mindedly, "So, it's such a tragic death." Looking at Commander J's back, Senior Yulia couldn't help but feel a chill crawling up her spine. This was no longer an execution, but a torture. But even so, the fact that Prince Desolate still couldn't die was still in front of her eyes. Even though he screamed again and again, the King of Sword, Dijuan, just looked on coldly. On one hand, it was an indisputable fact that he lost his power in the godless realm. On the other hand, he probably knew that even though he was suffering this kind of torture, Prince Desolate was indeed immortal. The royal immortal monster. "Save me. Sister, save me. Save me." At this time, Prince Desolate's screams had turned into terrified screams. His face was distorted, and he cried bitterly as he looked at Princess Angelique. "Save me. Sister, save me." I won't make you angry anymore. I beg you. You can kill me however you want in the future. I'll let you kill me. Save me. Too noisy. Commander J picked up the long sword again. But this time, the long sword didn't pierce into the hole in the wooden barrel, but directly pierced into Prince Desolate's mouth. From the mouth, it directly penetrated the back of Prince Desolate's head. When the blood-stained crimson sword slowly penetrated the back of Prince Desolate's head, Prince Desolate began to twitch crazily. Tears. Those were tears of pain and fear. The immortal body was no longer the prince's asset. Instead, it had become the prince's nightmare. Saliva and blood slid down from the corners of his mouth. Prince Desolate's eyelids closed again and again, and then opened again and again. His eyes gradually lost their luster after experiencing life and death again and again. The transition between life and death again and again. The coexistence of life and death. Prince Desolate had become Schrodinger's Desolate in another sense. Enough. Enough. It was already the 21st sword strike. Princess Angelique's slightly pale voice suddenly sounded. He's already like this. What can you do if you stab him a few more times? Angie, Commander J said indifferently. Killing him now is much less than killing him all the time. Princess Angelique subconsciously fell silent. Commander said, the execution of Desolate ends here. Next, it's your turn. He held the 20-second long sword and approached Princess Angelique's wooden barrel. Princess Angelique subconsciously looked up at him. Commander J said slowly, you don't have the ability of Desolate, so you probably only need one sword strike. You won't feel the pain of Desolate. Princess Angelique lowered her head and said faintly, do you hate us so much? I can't say that. Commander J shook his head. I just want to take this opportunity to do something. Princess Angelique suddenly raised her head, took a deep breath, and said, you're wrong, and you're wrong. Even if you really kill me, kill Desolate, and kill everyone, that person won't do anything to you. In his eyes, you're always the only successor. Whether it's me or Desolate, we're just tools created by that man to relieve his loneliness. Commander said indifferently, am I wrong? Maybe. I said, Angie, why don't you correct me like before? Can you do it? If you can't, I can only continue. Since you've given me this kind of power to do whatever I want, please be prepared that I will really do whatever I want. The 20-second sword pierced through the hole in the barrel without hesitation. Princess Angelique's mind was blank at this time. She looked at Commander J's eyes as if she felt all the despair, until the sword slowly emerged from the other side of the wooden barrel. But it was still a silver-white blade. There was no blood stain on it. Her body didn't have the piercing pain. Princess Angelique couldn't help but be stunned. A trace of complicated joy flashed in her eyes. She was about to speak. Just as she was about to speak, the 23rd sword, at this time, quietly pierced into another hole in the wooden barrel. In the wooden barrel, the sword directly pierced through Princess Angelique's shoulder. The heart-wrenching pain made Princess Angelique's pupils contract violently in an instant. The complicated joy instantly turned into disbelief and surprise. Then, sadness began to infect her. You're worse than Desolate. She squeezed out a miserable voice from her throat. Just like that person, we're just your tools. Commander still didn't speak. His palm turned again, and another long sword appeared in his hand. Felon clown, give up resistance. At this moment, hundreds of figures rushed to the top of the monument in an instant. Knights wearing strange, three-dimensional mobile armors directly landed on the ground. In an instant, hundreds of elite knights, seeing the miserable situation of Prince Desolate and Princess Angelique, had no time to think and had already attacked the ferocious, strange thief clown. The audience shouldn't be on the stage. Have some self-awareness. Commander J waved the long sword in his hand as if he was waving a magic wand. Hundreds of powerful elite knights were instantly surrounded by bubbles, and then they lost their balance and floated. They looked like ordinary soap bubbles, but no matter how they attacked, they couldn't break them. The knights were horrified. However, at this moment, an angry roar suddenly sounded. In the sky, a huge airship was crazily crashing into the human monument. On the airship, the person at the helm was Commander Bismack. He saw the strange thief, Clown, killing Prince Desolate, and also saw Clown attacking Princess Angelique. He couldn't care less if he would destroy the human monument. Let's end this. Clown. Commander Bismack's face had a trace of madness. I vowed to serve the royal family. However, it has been 3 years. For 3 whole years, I lived in humiliation. Today, I will erase the stain in my life. He wanted to crash into the human monument with the airship. This guy, no one told him about this. Commander J blinked his eyes and seemed to be surprised. Commander J shook his head and thought for a while. Then he pointed the magic sword in his hand again, and a huge bubble was formed, covering the airship that was about to crash into it. However, when the huge bubble was about to envelop the airship suddenly exploded. The explosion of this airship was very powerful. After the earth-shaking explosion, the horrifying airflow began to crash into the monument platform. The people who lost their abilities under the influence of godless realm were instantly blown away by this horrifying airflow. Instantly, senior sister, Yulia, grabbed the corner of Emperor Kai's clothes, and Emperor Kai grabbed the calf of Emperor Kai with his long hands. The royal general kicked Emperor Kai's face with disdain. Die. In the turbulent airflow, a figure with a sword in his hand flew toward Commander J. With the help of the airflow, Bismarck Commander, Captain J, calmly let out a sigh of relief. With a light tap of his magic sword, the Bismarck Commander that was flying towards him was instantly enveloped by a bubble. Taking advantage of that terrifying bubble, the Bismarck Commander was directly blown out of the monument platform. Far, far away. I won't give up. Clown. I will come back. Then, the Bismarck Commander became a star and disappeared in the sky. The strong airflow gradually calmed down. After the airship's explosion, the situation on the monument didn't change. Commander J came to Princess Angelique's wooden bucket again. Then goodbye to our memories, sister. Angie. Commander J raised the magic sword in his hand. Her Royal Highness moved her lips. Are you serious? Our memories, you don't care. The magic sword was still mercilessly stabbing into the sword hole. But at this moment, a cold light shot out and directly shot into the sword hole. At this moment, a small flying knife was inserted in front of the sword hole, blocking it. Commander J frowned slightly and threw the knife in the direction where the cold light came from. Outside the monument, a huge balloon full of patches slowly rose up. The flying dagger was obviously shot out from a car under the balloon. Then, the rope connecting the car and the big patch balloon was cut, and the car fell directly on the monument platform. At the same time, a man with a cross-shaped scar on his face was sitting on the roof of the car, driving a car directly on the monument of humans. I'm the first person among the gods. The leader of on the roof of the car chuckled and jumped down from the car. Hello, Mr. Clown. No. It should be the crown prince of the empire. Last time, we didn't have a chance to talk at the Turbid Witch's place. If you want an autograph, wait for a while. Commander, they chuckled. I have to continue my performance. That's difficult. The leader of Ian was calm at this time. But in fact, he was panicking and his palms were sweating. I personally brought all the members of Your Highness Circus here. As he spoke, he opened the door of the car. All the members of the fantasy circus, including Chintian, had fainted. Commander J was expressionless. The leader of Yin said slowly, "This is a relatively low-level method, but we really don't want to die under the death mark. Please forgive us, Your Highness, and please give up. We don't want to be buried with these 2 princes and princesses." In the car, there were already people from the bandits who placed sharp weapons directly on the circus members' necks. Commander J sighed slowly, then his face slightly froze. At this time, there was a sudden vibration on the monument, and the source of the vibration was from the position where Princess Angelique was locked. Commander J turned around and saw streaks of pure golden airflow rising from Princess Angelique's body like smoke. The regiment commander blinked and muttered softly. Finally, the golden airflow rose faster and faster. Princess Angelique suddenly raised her head, and a clear omega mark appeared on her forehead. Her eyes turned into a bright golden color, and at the same time, the wooden barrel that imprisoned her body exploded. Her Highness' long hair fluttered in the wind. She gripped the sharp sword that had pierced her shoulder and pulled it out bit by bit. There was no trace of pain on her face. At the same time, a strange ripple began to spread across the flat floor of the monument. Instantly, as if it was ignited, a huge amount of dark red steam rose from Kaiwang, his body after being kicked by the Sword King for a long time. Silent Field disappeared. No, it was cancelled. Kaiwang looked at the abnormal state of Princess Angelique in disbelief and exclaimed, "This is the third glorious sun?" Even though she was still wearing the bunny girl's equipment, the sword-wielding princess emitted a powerful aura. She waved the long sword in her hand. Another wooden barrel exploded, and all the sharp swords that pierced Prince Desolate. His body shattered and disappeared in an instant. Prince Desolate knelt on the ground, gasping for breath. "No matter what, this guy is my younger brother." Princess Angelique looked at his commander indifferently. "Only I, as his elder sister, can kill him. You can't do it either." Prince Desolate covered his throat, and the pain on his face gradually disappeared. Hearing those words, he opened his mouth in shock. "Elder sister, you really love me." One sword. The sword light exploded, and Prince Desolate, his head was chopped off. "You talk too much." Only Angelique's cold voice could be heard echoing in the air. Prince Desolate. Prince Desolate, his body obediently picked up his head and put it back on. Then, he covered his mouth with fear. Princess Angelique snorted coldly. She waved the long sword in her hand and went straight to Jika's commander, saying indifferently, "I'll correct you, my stupid younger brother. This reminds me of a lot of embarrassing things." J's commander chuckled and blocked with the magic sword in his hand. The moment the swords collided, the human monument shattered instantly. End of this chapter. Chapter 2240. The monument shattered. The human monument, which contained the heroic spirits from the mythical war, shattered, and the sky above the Holy Land changed dramatically. Countless heroic spirits rushed out from the shattered monument. Hundreds of ghosts, thousands of ghosts, tens of thousands of ghosts wandered around. The howls of the undead accompanied the sound of the wind, making the entire Holy Land sing a sad song. People's expressions changed. However, this was just the beginning. Next, they saw the collapse of the human monument. It shattered inch by inch until it finally fell down and turned into a huge pile of rubble. The leader of the Yin pirates didn't expect that he would fall to the ground in such a sorry state as soon as he stepped onto the human monument. The members of the Drowning Dog Pirates and the demi-humans that were gathered here were scattered by the collapse of the monument. Some of them were buried in the rubble. The human monument was equivalent to the achievements of humans, but at the same time, it was also equivalent to the humiliation of all the descendants of mythical creatures. The collapse of the human monument to the descendants of mythical creatures should be a big event worthy of celebration. However, the leader of the Yin pirates couldn't feel happy at this moment. The death mark of the Leviathan still existed. The lives of all the living people in the Holy Land were still in the hands of the god-destroying weapon, the Leviathan. A sad world, a monument stage. Is Ms. Ying's dream going to come true? The leader of the Yin pirates gritted his teeth and climbed up from the rubble. His ability had brought him to the center of the stage, but it seemed that he had reached his limit. He couldn't do anything about what would happen next. This isn't something that you need to participate in. You were just affected by it. That's all. You were messed up by fate. This world will continue. Live well. The voice seemed to be far and near. The leader of the Yin pirates instinctively looked for the source of the voice. On a piece of rubble in the rubble, he saw a black-haired man. The leader of the Yin pirates couldn't see the man's face. He could only see the man's back. Therefore, he didn't know the man's age. At this moment, the man raised his head and silently looked at the sky. The sky was the battlefield between Princess Angelique and the crown prince of the empire. You are... Ian was about to speak, but the black-haired man on the rock had already disappeared. It was like an illusion. Ian subconsciously rubbed his eyes. My injuries? Due to falling from a high altitude and colliding with a falling rock, his sternum was almost broken. However, at some point in time, it had already recovered to its original state. Other than the dust on his body, Yin found that his condition was unusually good. It's that black-haired man. Judging from his voice, he seems to be a young guy. But who could it be? As the saying goes, as long as there's smoke, there's no harm. Besides, Godless Domain has been cancelled out, and Senpai Yulia has recovered her black soul form. Her black soul form is almost completely immune to physical attacks, so she won't die no matter how many rocks fall on her. Wisps of mist floated out of the cracks in the stone and gathered together. Senior sister, Yulia, shook her dust-covered hair. Her condition was still quite good. The only fly in the ointment was that the shackles on her wrists were still connected to the chains. At the other end of the chain was the king of Swords General, Dijun. At this moment, Dijun was standing on top of a pile of rocks, not far away. He lowered his head and looked at the completely broken human monument with a slightly complicated expression. Yulia hesitated for a moment and finally climbed up slowly. You are sad for the dead people in the monument. The king of Sword General was silent for a moment. Finally, it turned into a long sigh. I don't know where to start cleaning. F***CK. I forgot this guy's character. Senior sister, Yulia, didn't know where to start complaining. You don't seem to care about the conflict between them at all. Senior sister had to ask tentatively. Dijun said indifferently. Both of them are glorious son. I can't even defeat both of them. How can I care about their conflict? So realistic. Senior sister, Yulia, nodded in agreement. Then she frowned and said, but I get it. Why did why did the crown prince deliberately provoke Princess Angelique? Dijun looked at senior sister, Yulia, expressionlessly. Senior sister, Yulia, shrugged and said, it's easy to see through this trick. If the princess had the same ability from the beginning, she wouldn't have been caught so easily, right? Dijun was still silent, as if he was thinking. Then he frowned and asked, are you really the crown princess candidate? Senior sister, Yulia, immediately shyly expressed that she could really transform into the crown prince's appearance at any time. La 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 la. Well, since your highness has admitted it. The king of swords general shook his head and thought for a moment before saying, in theory, only one glorious son can exist in each era. Glorious son is the fate and the end of everything. Since it's the end, there shouldn't be more than one. Well, what do you mean? Senior sister, Yulia, was stunned subconsciously. She seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but be moved. Maybe you already have the answer. Dijun said indifferently. The crown prince and his majesty have different ideas. His majesty believes that the end is the only one, while the crown prince believes that the future should be multipolar and shouldn't be controlled by fate. But ironically, they are called the glorious son that existed in the same era. Two different ideas, two forces that had to be assimilated, and finally gave birth to this entangled relationship. But Princess Angelique seems to be the same. Senior sister, Yulia, soon found the blind spot. Dijun said indifferently. In fact, the princess is the second glorious son that appeared in the same era. What? She gave up on her own accord and completely buried the seed of the glorious son. Later on, the crown prince's seed of the glorious son sprouted. Why did she give up? After a moment of silence, Dijun said slowly, Princess Angelique's point of view is the same as His Majesty's. To fulfill, senior sister, Yulia, lowered her head thoughtfully and muttered. She thought of the encounter with the founding emperor in the royal forest. The founding emperor gave her the feeling that he was a guy who didn't care about life and death, not to mention having any ambition or nostalgia. A guy who was willing to punish himself by cutting wood and not letting it grow. Maybe He was also waiting for the heir to walk in front of him and take away the power of the glorious son by himself. What a heavy family. Senior sister, Yulia, quickly figured something out and couldn't help but shake her head. If it were her, how could she bear all this? The supreme power that could only be obtained by sacrificing one's family was really like killing one's parents, sister, and whole family to prove one's Tao. Probably, I can only choose to escape. Senior sister, Yulia, let out a long sigh of relief. It was as if the questions in her heart had been completely answered. Her heart relaxed, and a thought flashed in her mind. Wait, the founder emperor has 4 descendants, and there's also a little princess who is already dead. Could it be because of the little princess, the unchanging younger sister, character in the page world of the Book of Gaia? This was the main point. She is a little different. At this time, Dijun gave senior sister, Yulia, an ambiguous answer. She is not the glorious sun from the beginning to the end, but she is related to another kind of power. What kind of power? Senior sister, Yulia's soul was agitated at this time, and her heart was beating wildly. It was as if she was opening a secret treasury that no one knew about. This kind of throbbing of the soul came suddenly. I can't say. What the F***CK? At this time, Dijun's eyes were sometimes confused and sometimes chaotic, as if his spirit was greatly disturbed. Finally, Dijun gently shook his head and looked at senior sister, Yulia, blankly. What did I say just now? Nothing. Senior sister, Yulia, shook her head, and the throbbing of the soul gradually calmed down when she gave up the idea of pursuing. Then fear. Even though she had been transformed into a black soul, as an immortal creature of the void dimension, her soul was still at the immortal level. What kind of thing was it that could make him feel as if he was facing a great terror just by having the thought of prying into it? The impulse to give up the pursuit was like an instinct. Suddenly, an air-piercing sound sounded, and a figure fell from the sky like a meteor and hit the ground directly. It was Princess Angelique. Boom! The ground was like a calm lake with a stone thrown into it, and a wave was set off. Under the spread of the wave, the buildings were instantly broken. At the bottom of the deep pit formed by the fall, Princess Angelique stood up unscathed, except for her slightly messy hair and pale face. She looked up and saw Commander J in the sky slowly descending. Is this all you've got, Angie? Commander J said indifferently. If you want to correct me with this, you're still far away. It seems that you've been idle for too long. It's just a warm-up. Are you very impatient? Princess Angelique looked calm, without any sadness or joy on her face. Only the bright golden light flashed from time to time in her eyes. Commander J smiled and said, "It always forces us to calm down. I'm afraid it's really hard to make you angry now. You're really too noisy." Princess Angelique said slowly, "Don't forget, I got into contact with the power of glorious sun earlier than you." Commander J's eyes gradually softened. Princess Angelique's eyes became colder and colder. She rose from the ground and slowly flew out of the deep pit. At the same time, countless grayish-purple cubes began to appear behind Princess Angelique. It was like a collection that couldn't be completely summed up by geometry. Princess Angelique said slowly, "Come out, Laplace." Countless real and virtual cubes finally combined into a complicated and ever-changing cube, hanging high above Princess Angelique's head. One of the 3 ultimate god-destroying weapons of the royal family, Laplace. She summoned Laplace. In the distance, Emperor June's face changed slightly. "What's this thing?" Senior sister directly typed a question mark, but she also faintly felt the horror of this strange cube. "It's a god-destroying weapon on the same level as Leviathan," Emperor June said seriously. "Except for the crown prince, the other 3 princes and princesses each have a god-destroying weapon. Leviathan originally belonged to the deceased little princess." Senior sister, Yulia, clicked her tongue. "That's not right. This Princess Angelique is the second glorious sun to be born, and she's also the owner of the divine destroyer artifact. Isn't she the perfect model for the main female lead? Emperor June didn't speak, but his face became more and more solemn. His eyes began to move in the sky as if he was looking for something. Senior sister, Yulia, muttered, "Wait, that be asterisk TC desolate. Also has a god-destroying weapon. I seem to hear you cursing me behind my back." "Yeah, be asterisk TC." Senior sister, Yulia, froze, and a feeling of déjà vu made her turn her head subconsciously. She saw a young man wearing a baseball cap with a smile on his face. "Hi." Senior sister swallowed her saliva and greeted him stiffly. "Hi." Prince Desolate looked very happy at this moment. Prince Desolate suddenly raised his hand, and senior sister, Yulia, gasped instinctively. She couldn't move, as if she was tied up by thousands of chains. Looking at the palm that was slowly coming toward her head, senior sister, Yulia, his eyes turned black. She closed them. "Huh." His palm rested on her shoulder, neither too lightly nor too heavily. Senior sister, Yulia, opened one of her eyes in confusion and nervousness, and then the other. At this moment, Prince Desolate had already taken back his hand. "You got hit by my bone-melting soft palm." "What the hell was this bone-melting palm?" Senior sister, Yulia, resisted the urge to beat this *TCH, but she suddenly felt like a basin of cold water had been poured over her head. How could this *TCH Prince know the moves in the subworld of 003? Did he read it when I was interrogated by Prince Desolate? "I heard that you have turned into the shape of so-and-so." Prince Desolate suddenly asked while rubbing his chin. "Yes." "Yes, so what?" Senior sister, Yulia, tried her best to hold on. Prince Desolate raised his fist and lifted senior sister, Yulia, up with one hand. Then he raised his left leg and made a perfect throwing posture. "Go!" Rainbow shining meat bomb. Well, the chains connected to the King of Swords were instantly broken, and senior sister, Yulia, flew out like a cannonball toward the god-destroying weapon Laplace. End of this chapter. Chapter 2241. The so-called rainbow glitter magic. Meatball, in fact, was to throw out 7 rainbow-colored phantoms. Through visual deception, it would greatly interfere with the batter's judgment, and thus throw a good ball fogged. Facing the god-destroying weapon Laplace, which was a huge combination of cubes, even if Yulia turned into 7 rainbow-colored lights, it was still useless. Even a strange scene appeared. Time seemed to go backward. At this time, the rainbow glitter magic bomb began to rewind and finally returned to the place where she was thrown out. However, Prince Desolate was no longer there. This guy seemed to have slipped away as soon as he did something bad. What happened to me? Time seemed to go backward, but her memory didn't. Senior, Yulia, still remembered the whole process of her being thrown out and then returning. The process even made her confused. The reversal of cause and effect is the ability of Laplace. Emperor June's voice sounded in her ears. In the relative space, Laplace's absolute ability can completely control the chain of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect? Yulia suddenly lost her voice. Isn't it invincible? Unbreakable? Only a god-destroying weapon can fight against a god-destroying weapon. Emperor June suddenly said, perhaps the ability of the same level. Glorious Sun is the power of destiny. Destiny against cause and effect? Senior sister, Yulia, opened her mouth and felt her scalp go numb. What kind of people are in this family? How can they casually control the top abilities in these dimensions? Primordial, her soul suddenly trembled a little, and the words that came out of her mouth didn't come out of her mouth at all. It was like an instinctive response to all the information that she knew. It was a sixth sense that transcended thinking but was based on thinking. Book of Gaia was a description of primordial. Destruction was the effect, and completeness was the cause. Cause and effect were reversed. The collapsed monument of human beings began to reverse at this moment. Every broken piece was following its original trajectory at a terrifying speed and returning to the place where it should have been. At this moment, the destroyed Holy Land was miraculously restored. People walked out of the disaster and looked at Princess Angelique, who was standing under Laplace like a god. Even though the princess was dressed like a bunny girl, she still made people kneel down willingly. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Goddess, long live your highness. Long live. Waves of cheers resounded within a radius of a few kilometers around the human monument. Her Royal Highness in the sky frowned slightly. If possible, she didn't want to show her current appearance. This farce should come to an end. Princess Angelique waved her hand. Laplace, which was in an unstable state, suddenly began to rotate. Countless cubes were swept up by a whirlwind and then scattering all over the sky of the Holy Land. Yeah, it's about time. The expression of this leader became calmer and calmer as he said faintly, "Things have already reached this point, yet he still isn't willing to come out. It's indeed about time. There's no need to really cross his bottom line. Come back with me." Princess Angelique snorted coldly, and tens of thousands of cubes instantly shot toward Jess' leader. However, at this moment, an extremely horrifying hissing sound that shook the world interrupted everything. Princess Angelique's expression changed slightly, and she looked back subconsciously. She saw that Leviathan, which was hovering in the sky, had opened its huge abyss-like mouth. The god-destroying weapon, Leviathan, one of the three ultimate weapons of the royal family, was as huge as an island. At this moment, Leviathan suddenly opened its huge mouth. At the same time, the death mark above everyone's head emitted bright red light. Still can't get rid of the death declaration. The King of Swords, General Dijuan, frowned and instantly turned into a stream of light, dashing toward the sky. If they still couldn't get rid of the death declaration in the end, they could only break the heart of Leviathan. This was their original plan. However, they were delayed for a long time, and the King of Swords couldn't stay in Leviathan's heart. They hoped that they could make it in time. Above the white clouds, another battlefield was taking place. This was the home ground of the King of Swords, General Dijuan. Sky above the sky, the King of the Sky. Every time he fought, he would pull people up into the sky, not to show off, but because since he was in a fight, of course, he had to fight recklessly on his home ground. Fushi had already fought recklessly and consumed a lot of energy. However, this fight wasn't as easy as fighting the six-winged young man who was suspected to be from the Light Clan. It's really against the rules, an opponent blessed by the glorious sun, or something. The strange cross-shaped weapon was now in Fushi's hand. Not far away, the bewitching young man holding a long black stick was panting heavily. Fushi felt that he should change his battle strategy. "Young man, what made you last until now?" The King of Swords, General Fushi, asked slowly. However, the bewitching young man was already like a puppet from the beginning. He didn't have the slightest reaction to the King of Swords, General Dijuan's words. Fushi raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "She has invested so much power of the glorious sun in you. It's very likely that your commander won't be able to defeat Her Highness. Maybe he'll even die. Of course, it's also possible that your body won't be able to withstand the power of the glorious sun and will die first." The bewitching young man's eyes seemed to have a trace of abnormality. Fushi chuckled and said, "Haven't you noticed yet? Your body is starting to collapse?" The bewitching young man's eyes moved, and he saw that some faintly discernible cracks had appeared on his body at some point. Just as the bewitching young man was in a daze, the cross-shaped weapon in Fushi's hand suddenly activated. All-directional exchange. Domain of souls. The space seemed to be completely enveloped in a huge gray ball. But the moment the bewitching young man came back to his senses, he was still directly trapped in this gray and black ball. Fushi stood in the gray and black ball, looking at the motionless, bewitching young man trapped in the ball, and said with a smile, "There should still be some time. Let's see what it is that made you willingly become a chess piece of fate." After saying that, the heavenly monarch directly threw himself into the ball and disappeared. At that time, I realized that there was a difference between a boy and a girl, and that they had to be separated. And I was actually a boy. I was a boy. Everyone told me the same thing. My parents, my family, my friends, and Remia. Not only was I a boy, but I was also an older brother. I was very happy that Remia was able to become a holy maiden candidate. Seeing her go to the temple and receive the education of a holy maiden candidate, I felt as if I had become a holy maiden candidate myself. Family should be of one heart. Remia's pride and glory should also become my pride and glory. The thing I liked the most? The thing I liked the most was that every time Remia came back from the temple, she would tell me all kinds of things she saw during class. The etiquette of a holy maiden candidate, the responsibility of a holy maiden candidate, the words of prayer of a holy maiden candidate, the situation when a holy maiden candidate sensed the saint. Why couldn't I sense the saint's attention? I had already prayed according to Remia's instructions. I had already practiced thousands of times. As expected, because I was a boy, I couldn't do it. Why was I? Remia had started to grow up, but she was still the same Remia who always liked to tell me all kinds of details, as if there was no difference. I still liked being the person Remia confided in. I fantasized. This was also my personal experience in my dreams. In my dreams, Holy Maiden candidate, Dashio, came out. I often woke up laughing, and when I woke up, the night was cold, dark, and dark. The pale flames almost destroyed Remia's path as a holy maiden candidate. I knew that this was because of Remia's recklessness, which led to the saint's punishment. The head priest told me that as long as I was willing to bear all of this, everything would become better. Very good, I didn't hesitate. Remia's pride and glory was my pride and glory. What I couldn't do, Remia would do it. She was me. Why? Why wasn't I, if I was also a holy maiden candidate? I wouldn't have to bear all of this, wouldn't be locked up, wouldn't be punished, and could even enter the temple and feel it openly. I shouldn't have such thoughts. I was a boy, an older brother, Remia's older brother. Actually, after accepting the fact that I was a boy, life wasn't that bad. I just hated the scars on my body. I didn't want to bathe in public bathhouses, and even when I bathed at home, I would close my eyes. They would definitely think that it was disgusting, right? Later on, I read a book, and the book said that I wasn't the only one with such a situation. It was a type of disorder called gender identity disorder. It turned out that I wasn't the only one with such troubles. I felt that I wasn't that lonely anymore. Remia, you will definitely become a holy maiden. I will always support you. No matter how hard I work, I won't give up. Do your best, Remia. I've already signed up for the Holy Guard class. I will go to the free city with you. The two of us should work hard together. Those clothes that I secretly hid at home, I should throw them away. After all, it wasn't good. They said it wasn't good. You are very beautiful. Who is this? Is this Light? Teacher Isabel, the authoritative teacher of the City of Freedom Academy, is Holy Rites class. Every Holy Maiden class was taught by her. Such a teacher, she saw me in the crowd. The moment I walked down from the train, someone saw me in the crowd. An enchanting aura, a mature body, mysterious, charming, noble, and calm. Teacher Isabel had everything that I expected. Try it on. This is the Holy Maiden robe. What, you don't want to? I am willing. I will be confused, afraid, worried, guilty, anxious, but I will have a trace of expectation. I am looking forward to Teacher Isabel's arrival. At this time, I was completely immersed in this dreamlike relationship. Teacher Isabel's hobbies were extremely perverted, but I felt like I was also a pervert. So what? Even if you aren't accepted by the mainstream, do you still need to live for the mainstream? You are just not strong enough. Not everyone is like you, Lady Isabel. Have you ever thought about becoming a holy maiden? That night, I didn't answer this question. Lady Isabel said that I wasn't honest enough and that I was a coward, so she punished me for the entire night, in her own way. Dasher, I ordered a few new robes for the Holy Maiden ceremony. Do you have time to help me get them? Only you can help me. I don't even have time to run away from the parade. No problem. I regretted it when I touched the robes that Miss Taylor personally handed to me. You actually secretly wore your sister's robes for the ceremony. You are really a pervert, Dasher. Those who don't know would probably think that you are a scumbag who loves his sister. I looked at myself in the mirror. At that time, I didn't pay much attention to what Lady Isabel said, or rather, I didn't hear it all. I was thinking if the me who appeared on the stage of the ceremony was like this now, would anyone accept me like this? I'm going to punish you properly, young man. My body was already in Lady Isabel's embrace. I felt like I was just a doll without a soul. Tomorrow, you should go and participate in the Holy Maiden ceremony. How is that possible? You don't want to go? If you don't go, I will use despicable means to disqualify Remia. At the same time, I will also announce that you are a pervert. I took a deep breath. This kind of consequence, no matter if it was Remia or me, we obviously couldn't bear. It seemed that I could only agree. For the sake of not disqualifying Remia, Lady Isabel began to caress my face. She looked at me with a smile and said, "As long as you find a reason, it will be fine, beautiful young man." A reason? A reason for me to go on stage. Would there be anyone who would accept me like this? Probably. If I only appeared as Daphne. If I only appeared once. If I could take away a part of the attention from everyone, even if it was just a small part. After the first round, I would voluntarily give up. Just the first round was enough. Go on stage. I'm Daphne, a boy. Chapter 2242. Perhaps I will never be able to return to the free cities. After the first week in this strange world, I suddenly had such a thought. I suddenly realized that what I cared about wasn't that I couldn't become a holy maiden or that I couldn't step onto the stage of a holy maiden as a boy. What I cared about was that I couldn't show my true face to others. But it was different here. They were all different. Leader, Mr. Fairski, Mr. Kaz. Wait, in their eyes, I was only Daphne from the beginning to the end. This was a world where I would wake up smiling even in my dreams. I woke up smiling. The sky outside was still dark and slightly cold, but there was already dawn. The first time I woke up in the middle of the night, I felt so peaceful and content. It turned out that it was so relaxing to not have to worry about other people's gazes. Remia, do I hope to find her or not? She was my free cities. Team leader was really a very charming person. Leader's gaze was different from others. Everyone seemed to be looking forward to meeting leader's gaze. But I always felt that leader didn't really want to come into contact with others. When the performance ended and the audience dispersed, leader, when you looked at the moon alone, did you think of someone? What was the mysterious past that could make you worry about it all the time? What would it be? I would have a long time to understand these things. I started to get used to it. I even felt that I was the real me here, and the free cities were just a distant dream. Sometimes it was good to dream. As a dream, everything that happened in the free cities was so real and so scary. I didn't want to leave this place and desperately hoped that I would never leave this place and return to the dreamlike free cities. I am Desu. I should be a girl. A crack suddenly appeared on the gray sphere. The king of heaven rushed out from the crack and saw the sea of clouds tumbling. This was the power of Leviathan, and it even affected the activation of Soul Domain. At the same time, the godly destroyer weapon, Leviathan, rang in his ears, and the heavenly monarch frowned subconsciously. He knew that something unexpected had happened inside Leviathan. However, at this moment, the gray sphere also shattered. The effect of Soul Realm was undoubtedly super powerful, but it could only be used once on the same target. This was the limitation of such a powerful ability. Otherwise, as a king general, his abilities would be somewhat out of line, and fate would find him. The moment the gray sphere shattered, the demonic youth who was trapped slowly raised his head. No longer had the gaze of a doll. The ability that a person could only use once had successfully awakened bewitching young man from the control of fate. Actually, the way you are right now is pretty good, the heavenly monarch general said rather casually. The Holy Land is a very tolerant place. Fushi wasn't sure if this demonic youth who had been blessed with the power of destiny from Gloria's son would suddenly go crazy. It wasn't that he was afraid, but he felt that it would be very troublesome. He had already done a lot of things that exceeded the value of his salary today. Working without overtime pay was not a blessing at all. Young man? The demonic young man. Deshio just looked at his hands calmly. Young man? Lady Isabel said that I can't ignore other people's gazes because I'm not strong enough. Deshio still looked at the heavenly monarch general calmly. Not long ago, I wouldn't even think about and couldn't imagine the so-called power. The opposite effect. Fushi frowned. Strictly speaking, Soul Realm was a very abnormal ability. Even he himself couldn't guarantee whether the result would be good or bad after activating this ability. To put it simply, it was common for things to go wrong. Yes, you have a very strong power now. Fushi said calmly, you don't have to care about other people's gazes anymore. Am I good looking? Deshio suddenly asked with a smile. The Heavenly Monarch General was absent-minded for a moment and answered instinctively. Let's not talk about whether you're good looking or not. The point is, I don't like that either. I knew you would say that. The Heavenly Monarch General scratched his head awkwardly and responded with two hollow laughs. I'm going back to the commander. The young man suddenly sank into the sea of clouds. The Heavenly Monarch General subconsciously opened his mouth. Then, he shook his head and sat on the sea of clouds. All right, let's end today's overtime for the time being. Leviathan. In the heart cavity of the Divine Destroyer artifact, a stream of light flashed. The King of Swords appeared and strode into the heart cavity. In front of the huge heart, the half-elf girl and the six-winged young man were standing there, speechless. As for the heart, it was currently beating wildly. Not only that, the surface of the heart was now covered with a layer of hard shell that looked like a stratum corneum. What did you do? The King of Swords' cold voice sounded. The half-elf girl was instantly startled. When she saw the identity of the person who came, her face turned pale. Most of the time, it was because she was scared. No, it wasn't me. It was him. He did it. Karina pointed out without saying anything and said with a trembling voice, This guy. He touched the heart. It was just a light touch. Madanzo added with a sideways glance. How outrageous. The King of Swords took a deep breath, as if he was trying to suppress the anger in his heart. Once the heart of the Leviathan is touched, it will instinctively secrete a layer of protection. If the heart cannot be destroyed in one blow, this layer of protection will continue until it thinks it is safe. Madanzo frowned and said, Your sword can't break it? The King of Swords said in a deep voice, I can break it, but when I break it, the death mark will be completely activated. I heard from a guy whose head is full of muscles that as long as you run fast enough, the Leviathan can't hit you. Is that true? Madanzo took a deep breath and asked. The King of Swords sneered and said, You think you can outrun light? Madanzo immediately rolled up her sleeves and clenched her fists. Come. I think we can still struggle a little. You can't break it by yourself. If you count me in, we should be able to catch up. Anyway, defusing a bomb is usually done in the last few seconds. I believe that my model must be the model of the protagonist. Dijun had already pulled out his sword and slashed at the heart of the Leviathan that was covered with hard shells. At this time, if only Guy was here, I don't want to defuse the bomb in the last few seconds. Madanzo muttered, but she had already condensed the sword of feather and attacked immediately. The two of them slashed at the two sides of the heart almost at the same time. In the heart cavity, there were suddenly sparks and lightning. With the first strike, the two of them successfully left a faint mark on the hard shell of the Leviathan's heart. Bah! How can I defuse it? The force of the rebound made Madanzo's whole body go limp. It was falling. Even though it was slow, it was only because it was big enough that it looked like this. In fact, it was falling at a terrible speed. Smoke was coming out, and there were traces of the battle everywhere. It was a god-destroying weapon the size of an island. The Leviathan. At this moment, the atmosphere was surging, and the pressure made it hard for people to breathe. Senior Sister Yulia looked to the left. The King of Swords, Dijun, wasn't there. After this guy boarded the Leviathan, he didn't do anything, but the fact that the Leviathan was falling didn't change anything. She also looked to the right and behind her, but she didn't see the B*TCH prince who almost had the word B*TCH carved on his face. Ever since this guy threw her out like a baseball and showed her the strange ability of Laplace, she didn't know where he was hiding. Bam! These despicable guys. If we let the Leviathan fall, I'm afraid that half of the Holy Land will be wiped out. How many people will die in half of the Holy Land? Senior sister Yulia's face was livid, and her lips were pale. She didn't want to believe that the instigator of such an ending was Team Leader J. In the previous page worlds, a character like the guild leader was clearly the savior of the world. Why was it that in this world, he had become the destroyer of the world? Is it because I haven't experienced enough? There are many pages in the Book of Gaia. No one could say for sure that the male protagonist didn't go crazy in so many page worlds. After all, this was just a little girl's daily graffiti. Daily graffiti? Is it really just like this? What is the ending? What is the ending? The ending. Senior sister, Yulia's eyes were red. The ending was already in the hands of the boss. He knew the ending, so he didn't care about what the ending was going to be. That was why he could let things develop as they wished. On the other hand, if the boss allowed things to develop without doing anything, wouldn't it mean that the boss was satisfied with the original ending, slightly satisfied, average, reluctantly accepting it? But the boss still let me continue to participate in this page world. What does he want me to do? Or what does he want me to do? It's too difficult for me. No matter what you want me to do, I have to make sure that I can survive this catastrophe. Even if the Leviathan falls, and I can survive with my black soul body, I can't escape the final activation of the mark of death. It's too difficult for me. Senior sister Yulia took a deep breath and sorrowfully looked around. In the end, her eyes locked on a Captain J's body. It's too difficult for me. Let's do it. She was Miss Witch of the Academies in her subworld. At this moment, her body instantly transformed into mist. The grayish-black mist surged, scattered, and gathered. When it reformed again, Yulia's figure had already disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a 15 or 16-year-old girl wearing white clothes. This 15 or 16-year-old girl was 60 or 70% similar to the Crayon Kingdom's Little Fairy, 70 or 80% similar to the Wraith Realm's Littleya, and 80 or 90% similar to the Page World's Miss Gaia. In the sky, the ever-changing cubes seemed to be anxious because of the Leviathan's loss of control. Princess Angelique's expression was also uncertain. Are you really going to destroy the Holy Land? Her Royal Highness glared at Captain in front of her. Are you willing to go to this extent? Captain J only looked at the falling Leviathan and said in a low voice, "It's in pain for so many years, it was restrained by the royal family." Princess Angelique gritted her teeth and suddenly waved her hand. With a wave of her hand, the cubes instantly spread out and turned into countless small cubes. They madly rushed out and attached themselves to the falling Leviathan. It was obvious that they wanted to reverse the fall of Leviathan. But before this, Captain J's figure flashed and directly blocked the cubes. The cubes that flew past him instantly lost their vitality and fell to the ground one after another. Each cube was only the size of a soccer ball, but its mass was terrifying. The moment it fell to the ground, it was like an iron ball. The anger in Princess Angelique's eyes intensified, but at this time, she saw a figure running quickly on the ground. As if he was running for his life, he pressed the baseball cap on his head while looking at the falling Leviathan. A long smoke dragon ran out from under his feet. It was Prince Desolate. Damn guy. Bastard. Take your responsibility as a prince. Princess Angelique shouted angrily and directly reached out to grab Prince Desolate. But she didn't expect that the power of Gloria's Sun would grab nothing. Prince Desolate was still holding his limited edition baseball cap at this time and shouted strangely, "You immortals are fighting, don't touch me. Sister, I'll make soup for you later. Put 2 red dates. Goodbye." Desolate, what waste of my effort just now. Her Royal Highness shouted angrily. With nowhere to vent her huge power, her hair instantly fluttered. One is like this, 2 are like this. I was born to be cheap, so I have to be burdened by the 2 of you? Anxious. Prince Desolate waved his hand and pointed. A huge sword appeared out of thin air and directly slashed down. Prince Desolate was instantly beheaded. Then his body picked up his head and continued to run out of the floating castle. Princess Angelique's face turned green and white, but she stared at Captain J hatefully. She suddenly raised her hands high and condensed a huge light sword that was 100 meters long. Holding the sword, Her Royal Highness slashed at Captain J without thinking. Are you going to be obedient or not? Time is almost up. Facing this 100-meter-long light sword, Captain J's face was calm. He slowly sighed, and a mark on his forehead slowly appeared. He stretched out his hand. At this moment, a young girl in white appeared in front of J.'s leader. Her Royal Highness, who was jumping and slashing with the 100-meter-long sword in the air, suddenly froze in the air. She was absent-minded. Brother, stop. Just treat it as for me, okay? The girl in white said faintly. Captain J was also absent-minded for a moment. Yeah? Chapter 2243. Let's go back together, brother. The girl in white showed an impeccable and innocent smile and slowly stretched out her hand. She was always smiling, but when serious, it was filled with sadness, as if there were tears. It was a gentleness that could melt everything. At this moment, in the eyes of the leader, J, everything seemed to become quiet. Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged, and a huge light sword that was 100 meters long suddenly slashed at the back of the leader, J. It was like a silent old movie that was injected with sound and color. A smear of red instantly gushed out, and the leader J's body trembled, and he fell straight to the ground. The girl in white's smile gradually disappeared, and she subconsciously looked at Her Highness Angelique, who stabbed her in the back. Was it like this? At that time, in the study room, Her Highness Angelique showed mixed feelings of love and hate. Was it an illusion? How could she just slash at me like that? The leader J was absent-minded because of her, and then he was directly injured. In other words, she became an accomplice? She felt that something was wrong. The girl in white only felt a slight chill at the back of her neck. She met Her Highness Angelique's gaze, which was the gaze of looking at a corpse. You're very good, although I don't know who you are. Huh? Her Highness Angelique was expressionless, but the huge sword in her hand instantly pointed at the girl in white. Such a long sword light extended to the girl in white's eyes in an instant. This was a cold light, the cold light of death. We didn't dare to give him this hope, but you gave it to him. Her Highness Angelique sighed at this time. Also, if she grows up, she won't look like you. Also, don't tarnish my sister's appearance. Facing the danger of death, the girl in white instantly gasped. There was no time to think about the meaning of these words, and she could only run now. But the sword light that was 100 meters long suddenly became 200 meters long and directly penetrated the girl in white's body. The girl in white looked at the penetrated body in disbelief, and then the sword light disappeared, and she was like a kite with a broken string, free falling from a high place. So this time, it was still one too small? How could it be? The girl in white gradually lost consciousness. It was a scene that resembled the end of the world. The huge god-destroying weapon, Leviathan, fell, stirring up the wind and clouds. Under the threat of the death mark, people knelt on the ground in despair. Thick clouds covered the sky, and the Holy Land became dim. On the ground, the captain of J, whose clothes were dyed red with blood, turned over with great difficulty. His hands trembled as he staggered to his feet. The moment she stood up, the Empress appeared like a god, and the mark on her forehead became even brighter. On the other hand, Captain J's mark had already dimmed. You're too careless. You clearly know that this is impossible. Captain J staggered 2 steps. There was a huge wound on his back, but he smiled and said, Magic is something that everyone knows is a fictional skill, but they still like to watch it. I'm very unhappy. Princess Angelique exhaled slowly. Everything should have gone according to plan, but you. Maybe it's because of the late rebellious period? Captain Dick chuckled, but his smile was pale. A complicated look flashed in Princess Angelique's eyes. She sighed softly. Then I can only keep you by my side and watch over you. After saying that, Princess Angelique raised the sword in her hand and said sternly, Now, your fate is up to me. Seal, the battle of glorious sun. That you don't want to, I'll temporarily accept it for you. That sword, I'll swing it for you. At this moment, a long black staff was swung down from above. Captain. He saw a young man dressed in restrained clothing, advancing courageously at this moment. You're overestimating yourself. Princess Angelique snorted coldly, and the long sword in her hand casually slashed at the long black stick. The long black stick was instantly shattered. The young man who was charging forward was instantly sent flying by an irresistible force, crashing into a tall building in front of him. However, the moment before the building fell, the young man jumped out again and stood in front of Captain J. Daphne? Captain J was slightly surprised. Dashiell. The young man looked back and said in a low voice, "Sorry, I haven't been able to tell you. My name is Dashiell." Captain J shook his head slightly. "Dashiell, I'll remember it." The young man took a deep breath and faced Princess Angelique. He slowly put up a fist stance, his eyes firm. Princess Angelique frowned slightly. "Blessing of fate? Do you know that what you're fighting against is already fate itself?" "Then I'll defeat it," the young man said straightforwardly. Princess Angelique sneered disdainfully. Her voice seemed to contain heavenly might as she said indifferently, "Kneel." The young man's body instantly became heavy. His knees exploded and his body bent down. The princess didn't seem to care so much about outsiders. However, what Princess Angelique didn't expect was that even though she was suppressing him, the demonic young man in front of her actually resisted it. He suddenly took a step forward and supported his body that was about to kneel down. Princess Angelique's eyes were filled with killing intent. "It's futile. Even if I can't win, I have to fight." The young man gritted his teeth and raised his head with difficulty. His body stood up little by little. Princess Angelique shook her head, and a golden light flashed in her eyes. The blessing of fate on the young man was instantly removed. Suddenly, the young man's body stiffened as if everything was sucked out of him. His body that had just barely stood up fell down instantly. Ow! Sure enough, no matter how he resisted, there was no way to resist fate. With the blessing of the power of destiny and the effect of the land of souls, Dashiell was like a spectator quietly watching the past. Somehow, he only knew what he wanted to do, and he also vaguely felt the meaning of the turbid witch's words about him leaving. Captain couldn't stay in the Holy Land. Once he stayed in the Holy Land, everything would end. He had to leave this world that could accept him. I didn't ask you to force yourself. Somehow, he felt that his body was caught by something. The young man opened his eyes. Captain J's gaze was fixed on him as usual. Captain, The young man only felt a wave of fatigue that he had never felt before. His eyelids trembled, as if they would close at any moment. However, he used the last of his strength to reveal a trace of a smile. Am I good-looking? Whether you're good-looking or not is another matter." Captain J shook his head. "The point is, I'm not interested in this either." The young man instantly lost his voice. Captain J used his finger to scratch the blood at the corner of the young man's mouth and smeared the blood on the young man's lips. He said softly, "But since you're so cute, you must be a boy." The young man slowly closed his eyes after the blood was smeared on his lips. His smile was eternal. "Let's go back," Captain J said softly. The young man and his arms disappeared little by little. "Are you done saying goodbye? If you're done, come back with me." Princess Angelique had already placed the blade of her sword on Captain J's neck. "Leviathan is really going to fall," Captain suddenly said. "Also, it's time." Princess Angelique's eyes narrowed. She sensed the death marks and saw that all the death marks had become extremely red. "How can I let you do as you wish?" Princess Angelique gritted her teeth. The mark on her forehead instantly shone with golden light. The power of glorious sun on her body suddenly became violet. "If it's going to fall, I'll destroy it." The god-destroying weapon, Laplace, gathered even more crazily. Then it spread out. A destructive power began to condense on Laplace. "Angie," he called her softly. Princess Angelique, who was bathed in the light, instantly felt as if she had been electrocuted. The crazily operating Laplace seemed to have lost its power and instantly stopped. Captain J had already embraced Princess Angelique. The familiar aura, the familiar feeling, and the soft murmuring voice made Princess Angelique's mind go blank. At this moment of hesitation, the falling of Leviathan was irreversible. The huge, god-destroying weapon that was as big as an island finally crashed into the ground. In the end, at this moment, Yian slowly closed his eyes. Then he suddenly opened his eyes and opened his arms. Facing the huge, meteorite-like object, he made a hugging gesture. "Ha ha! I can brag about being killed by a god-destroying weapon for the rest of my life. Come on." In the cell of the Purge Knight's camp, the Witch of Turbidity grabbed the iron bars with her hands. At this moment, her eyes were lifeless, and her voice was full of resentment. "Why am I so unlucky? Why am I so unlucky? This is how I am unlucky, right? It's like this in this life and the next life. Ha! In the atrium of the heart of Leviathan. Can't we make it in time?" The King of Sword, Dijuan, stopped. Countless cracks appeared on the light blade in Dijuan's hand. Beside him, Medanzo looked at her hands helplessly. Her fists were swollen to twice their original size. However, under the crazy continuous attacks, only a few cracks appeared on the hard shell of Leviathan's heart. It was still far from being broken. "Look, look!" the half-elf girl suddenly exclaimed. At this moment, something seemed to be coming out from the cracks on the hard shell of Leviathan's heart. It seemed to be light. Light? Medanzo was stunned subconsciously. Under the light, the hard shell of Leviathan. His heart was broken instantly. The beating heart emitted a bright light. The radiance instantly filled the entire atrium of his heart, as if it was going to erase everything. Let go of me." She was a little helpless, a little flustered, and even a little anxious. Princess Angelique gritted her teeth and tried to push away Jay, who was hugging her. However, she couldn't push him away. The violent power of Glorious Sun became as gentle as a stream and even began to hibernate. Princess Angelique lost all her strength. "Let go of me." Princess Angelique was furious at this moment, but her face changed. Leviathan. The moment Leviathan fell, it completely exploded. The island-sized godly destroyer weapon, which had an interior and exterior, seemed to have transformed into a huge sun as it landed on the ground. No one would be able to survive this calamity. Princess Angelique closed her eyes in despair. She gritted her teeth and put her hands around Jis' body, gently returning his hug, and said faintly, "At least, I'm the one who is with you." Under the extreme light, it seemed to usher in the extreme darkness. Chirp, chirp. However, in the darkness, a joyful cry suddenly sounded. It was the cry of an animal. When a crowd felt unprecedented despair, a joyous cry rang out. "You look, look!" Someone's voice sounded. People opened their eyes and found that the Holy Land in front of them was no longer the one they were familiar with. The entire Holy Land had turned into a huge ocean. It was a huge golden ocean. The golden seawater poured into the Holy Land and flooded the streets, submerging the people's bodies. But just as the people instinctively covered their mouths and noses, they discovered that the surging golden seawater was like a cool breeze, making them feel comfortable. It wasn't real ocean water, but air currents that looked like ocean water. "What's that?" In the golden ocean, a joyful animal cry sounded. Then a huge thing suddenly jumped up from the ocean. It was like a fish swimming in the sea. It was currently jumping around in this golden sea to its heart's content. It was the god-destroying weapon, Leviathan. However, at this time, all of the hard shell, metal plates, and all of the facilities on the Leviathan's body had already been removed. It was like a living whale, swimming freely in the Holy Land capital that had turned into a golden ocean. "Leviathan, this is..." Royal Princess Angelique watched this scene in disbelief. The jumping Leviathan turned over and fell down, setting off endless waves of the golden ocean. The waves slapped the princess's body, but they were like a cool breeze that passed by. "You're here to liberate it." Her Royal Highness looked at the person in front of her subconsciously. Leader Jay smiled faintly and said softly, "I came to the Holy Land to celebrate your birthday." This is the performance of the fantasy circus for you. The death mark exploded instantly. The bright red symbol above everyone's heads instantly exploded. It turned into rays of light that soared into the sky. Then, it turned into the most brilliant fireworks. Angie, happy birthday. The error-free chapters of Trafford's Club will continue to be updated in the bar. There are no advertisements in the website. Please bookmark and recommend the bar. If you like Trafford's Club, please bookmark Trafford's Club. The bar updates the fastest. Chapter 2244. Perhaps it was the golden mist that made the Holy Land look like it was submerged by the golden ocean. Countless photons floated in the golden ocean like microbes in the ocean. After the giant whale of light had removed all traces of human activity, they moved in a regular pattern in the golden ocean. It's like, I feel very relaxed. People walked out of their hiding places and stroked the floaters. There was no death mark above their heads, and the dazzling fireworks above the golden ocean were still shining brightly. After surviving the disaster, people gathered in the streets. Some people held their children in their arms, some people held hands, and some people kissed the most important thing in each other's lives. It's Her Highness. It must be Her Highness who stopped this catastrophe. It's Her Highness Angelique. Chirp dash. Chirps resounded in the sky. The giant whale-like creature of light, Leviathan, suddenly jumped out of the sky and broke through the clouds. Then, it fell from the clouds and passed through the wreaths of flames that were gathered by the fireworks before returning to the golden ocean. It looked like a dolphin that had been performing for a long time under the control of an animal trainer. Countless floaters were attached to the huge wound on her body. Senior sister Yulia inhaled sharply as if her heart was beating rapidly. She instantly sat up. The image of a white-clothed girl had been destroyed by the sword strike of Her Highness. Several figures slowly landed. They were Madanzo, the half-elf girl, and the king of sword general, Dijun Sr. Senior sister Yulia hurriedly got up. What's this? Madanzo shook her head and gestured to the king of sword general with her chin. Then, she shrugged and said, ask him about it. This is the original appearance of Leviathan. After a moment of silence, Dijun slowly said, Leviathan is a mysterious fantasy creature from the mythological era. It was captured by humans and then made into a god-destroying weapon. I never thought that the Crown Prince's real purpose was to set it free. Perhaps that's not all. Yulia seemed to be deep in thought. Anyway, Emperor June shook his head and sighed. At least it's not that bad, but I'm afraid you'll have to clean for a long time. Yulia chuckled. The Sword King's cold face revealed a rare light smile, a cold smile. At this time, his sword suddenly shot out from his hand. It is time to arrest you, the perpetrators of this disturbance. The F***CK? Why did this guy suddenly change his attitude? The atmosphere was clearly very good just now. However, the Sword King General clearly did not have the ability to joke around. When he said he would attack, he really did attack. The sword in his hand slowly slashed down. Madanzo was already prepared to fight back. In the golden ocean, the sword of feathers instantly gathered. Secret skill, trash can shooter. At this moment, senior sister, Yulia, suddenly shouted. The king of swords instantly frowned and subconsciously looked at the trash can on the side of the street. However, the trash can beside the street was motionless. The so-called trash can shooter didn't appear at all. Dijun's eyes narrowed. At this time, there was no trace of Yulia and the others on the street. After a moment of silence, he suddenly shook his head and muttered, It's good that they left like this. Dijun slowly sat down on a bench on the street. Seeing that the armrest of the bench had already changed shape, he straightened the armrest with his palm. Then he leaned on the back of the chair and looked up at the sky. Tomorrow, I'll clean it. At this time, a light column suddenly shot out from the royal floating castle into the sky. The Sword King General frowned subconsciously. Then he immediately felt relieved and whispered, The will of Guy. Time rewound a little. It was a few minutes before the Divine Destroyer artifact, Leviathan, was about to fall. In the royal floating castle, in the small forest where the founder emperor was cutting wood, a huge dark red steam was pushing the huge trees into the depths of the forest. In the depths of the forest, an unpretentious man was cutting wood with an axe in his hand. Feeling the impact of the dark red wave, the man stopped the axe in his hand and said indifferently, "You're here, Guy." The dark red steam floated like a red dragon. The veins on Guy's forehead bulged, and his eyes were like that of a ferocious beast. "I didn't expect that one of you inherited Glorious Sun. Now that the power of Glorious Sun has been divided into 3 parts, you should be at your weakest now." Guy said in a low voice, "So it's best to kill you now. How can I let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity?" They all said that you're not very smart and only have muscles. I think they have misunderstood you. The man chopped the axe on the tree trunk and then let go of it. He turned around and sized up Guy, who had a strong aura. The big hero of shadow, Guy. Guy raised his eyebrows and snorted. "I've always been clear-headed." The man said expressionlessly, "You don't have a brain at all. Go to hell. Care affair." Kai Emperor suddenly exploded and kicked out. The man did not move. He only let out a sigh in the face of the Azure Dragon's fatal attack. He said in a low voice, "Fate is fate, because no matter how many pieces fate has split into, each piece is still fate." "Guy, do you still not understand?" Crack. Guy used all his strength. His final willpower that burned everything paused for a moment because of this sound. This kick only hit the big tree beside the man. "Guy, as long as you're alive, you can't resist the erosion of time." The man chuckled. "Your osteoporosis? It seems that starving you for so long has some effect. Califar, you old bastard. After all, your indestructible willpower is quite dangerous." The man said indifferently, "It's even more dangerous for a brainless guy like you whose brain is full of muscles. You'd better choose a new successor." A strange mark slowly appeared on the man's forehead. Instantly, Guy felt the arrival of fate. Guy's expression changed slightly. "What do you want to do?" "If," the man chuckled, "the last successor of the indestructible willpower is a child who has an entanglement with the successor of fate, things will become very exciting. Don't tell me you're tired. Have a rest, Guy." The man walked in front of Emperor Kai and reached out his hand to touch Emperor Kai's forehead. "By the way, I've done this kind of thing many times. Can you be a little more creative next time? At least wash your feet first before doing it." "Califar." See you next time." That was the origin of the light beam. On the long street. Almost there. You shouldn't be chasing us anymore. The half-elf girl was panting heavily. Escaping from the hands of the Empire's Sword King General. This was 2F** King exciting. This time, she could brag about it for the rest of her life. "Well, from the looks of it, he shouldn't be chasing us anymore." Senior Yulia stopped. After calming her breath, she said slowly, "Kaliana, let's part ways here." "Huh." The half-elf girl didn't react in time. Senior Yulia said, "We don't belong here. Forget what you've seen and heard on this journey. I believe you'll be happy." After saying that, she glanced at Madanzo. Madanzo shrugged her shoulders. While the half-elf girl was in a daze, the two of them suddenly flew into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Are they bullying me because I can't fly?" The half-elf girl muttered indignantly, but eventually gave up. In fact, she wanted to go back to that peaceful coastal town. "It's a messy journey, right?" Kaliana lowered her head and sneered. She felt like everything was a dream. But at this moment, a burning sensation suddenly floated from her chest. The half-elf girl instantly felt like she couldn't breathe. She only felt that something was blocking her chest. She pulled open her collar in a panic. At this moment, there was a dark red emblem on her chest. It was slightly glowing. "What's wrong with me?" The half-elf girl suddenly shivered, and the heat of the emblem on her chest gradually faded. She slowly exhaled. While she was puzzled, she saw a few familiar figures faintly appear in the golden sea. These guys seemed to be... The gorgeous fireworks would eventually be extinguished, just like the end of a movie. So, Uncle Cicero knew about this from the beginning. Her Royal Highness suddenly pushed away the guy hugging her with a sullen expression. "I knew it. Why didn't the guy do anything? It turns out, how could I be fooled by you?" Captain J looked at her Royal Highness with gentle eyes. It was just a temporary idea. At the banquet, I saw you playing the role of the strange thief clown, so I had this idea. Is it fun? Princess Angelique instantly became expressionless. Captain J scratched his cheek and thought for a moment. For now, whether it's fun or not is another matter. At least it has slightly changed the impression of the residents of the Holy Land on you. I still say the same thing. Angie, you don't have to keep a straight face all day. As a girl, if you keep being called a killer, you won't be able to get married. It's none of your business. Her Royal Highness's voice instantly turned cold. The power of glorious sun in her body burst out again, and a golden airwave was released. Under the impact of the airwave, Captain Jit's figure instantly became unstable and slowly fell down. Princess Angelique's expression froze, and the power of glorious sun instantly disappeared. She hurriedly hugged Captain J, who had fallen down into her arms, and said in a trembling voice, What happened to you? I hurt you before. Her hands touched the terrible wound on Captain J's back. Princess Angelique's heart trembled, and her face turned pale with horror. I didn't do it on purpose. It's you. You're disobedient. You always make me angry, bully me, so... Angie, I can only bully you this time. Captain J's voice gradually weakened. The rabbit costume suits you very well. Don't. The figure in her arms gradually faded. Princess Angelique's shoulders trembled, and tears welled up in her eyes. The world seemed to turn into sadness in an instant, and all colors faded away. Captain J's body instantly turned into a cloud of stardust and dissipated, leaving only a bright red rose in the end. Princess Angelique was slightly stunned, and she subconsciously raised her head, only to see a figure in the sky floating away on a balloon at this time, and even waving at her. Goodbye, Angie. You bullied me again. Princess Angelique instantly gritted her teeth and stood up. She was so angry that her veins swelled up. Well, last time, if you have the ability, don't come back in the future. Roaring like this, Princess Angelique watched the figure gradually go away. She slowly sighed, held a rose in her hand, and looked at it slowly. Next time, at this moment, a strange voice quietly sounded behind Princess Angelique. I didn't do it on purpose. You're disobedient. You always make me angry and bully me, so Angie, the rabbit costume suits you very well. Don't go. I don't want you to go. And The veins on Princess Angelique's forehead instantly surged, and the gravel around her instantly floated into the air and shattered into dust. Sure enough, at that time, it was right to make you wish you were dead. Famine. The boy in the baseball cap blinked at this moment, turned around, and ran. Sister Huang, I think I can still be saved? There's no need for that. How about I kill you 100 times today? When we were at the monument, you were still so protective of me, saying something like, no matter what, this guy is still my little brother. Sister, you have to follow your heart. You clearly love me, right? Go to hell. Help! Your Majesty, Sister Huang is going to kill me again. Prince Angelique exclaimed all the way and ran toward the floating castle. Behind him, Princess Angelique was chasing with a 40-meter-long greatsword. In the distance, the escaping duo who was alarmed by the 40-meter-long greatsword instantly hid. Senior, Yulia rubbed her chin at this moment and said uncertainly, is the relationship between this princess and this bitch prince actually quite good? Maybe it's just a bit awkward? In this kind of powerful family, I'm afraid only the members of the family care about each other, right? Mortals can't understand. Madanzo also rubbed her chin, then shook her head and said, but I didn't expect this princess's character to be like this. She seems quite vicious. That night in the manor, she killed so many nobles without hesitation, and she really killed them. Speaking of which, Yulia blinked at this moment and then put her hand into her mouth. Then, under Madanzo's horrified gaze, she pulled out a large stack of documents from her mouth. So disgusting. Madanzo instantly shivered. Although I'm curious about what this is, can I not touch it? It's up to you whether you want to look or not. So what is this? Madanzo picked up the stack of documents on the ground with a disgusted expression. The list of the banquet's guests? Yulia shrugged and said, the people who are invited to the banquet seem to be nobles who do whatever they want. The kind of people who don't feel wronged, even if they are killed. I see. Madanzo was thoughtful. Suddenly, a vortex appeared beside the two. The escaping duo froze at this moment. They were familiar with the vortex. This was the vortex that they used to pass through the page world. Wait a minute. It seems like we didn't find the page world. Madanzo was confused. Yulia, his heart skipped a beat. The page world. The boss said that the page world is already in his hands. In other words, this vortex was opened by the boss. While he was contemplating, a figure suddenly fell from the sky. It was none other than Sister Serene, who had been in a half-dead state ever since they left the Wraith Realm. Before they left for the Holy Land, the nun lady had been temporarily taken care of by Metatro in an inn in a seaside town. Sister Selene's body was instantly sucked into the vortex. Before the escaping duo could react, they were also sucked into the vortex. Yulia was shocked and immediately rode on top of Madanzo. Senpai, prepare to fall. Protect me. You motherfucker. There was light on the stage as the curtains slowly opened. A magician was standing alone on the stage, holding a hat in one hand and a magic wand in the other, performing the simplest magic trick of summoning a pigeon from his hat. His expression was calm. He performed for a long time, until the last time, it wasn't a pigeon that flew out of his hat, but a small blue bird. The small blue bird then flew out of the stage. A group of people slowly walked in from the seats on the stage. Chingtung, Mr. Katz, they were from the Circus of Dreams. The little blue bird landed on Qingtian's shoulder. Qingtian smiled. It's been hard on you, bringing the camp all the way here. The little blue bird proudly combed its feathers. Everyone exchanged glances and smiled, then walked up to the stage and shouted in unison, Leader, everyone is here. It's been hard on everyone, the magician said apologetically. Because of my stubbornness, you've all wasted a vacation. If you treat this trip as a vacation, it's actually not that bad, of course. If you can get a pay raise, everyone would be even happier, Leader chuckled lightly. All of a sudden, Leader, we found someone outside. It's a woman. At this moment, a few figures hurried in. Behind them was an acquaintance, the half-elf girl, Karina. It seems that when we left the city, she discovered us and followed us all the way. I don't know when she even snuck into our camp, but we found her in the prop room. Faced with everyone's covetous gazes, the half-elf girl couldn't help but reveal an awkward smile. Hi, I remember you're called Karina, right? Leader, Jay, sized up the half-elf girl in front of him thoughtfully. Karina hurriedly walked forward as if she was seeing stars. Strange bandit clown, and he's the crown prince of the empire and the famous magician of the Circus of Dreams. I'm going to die. Why are my idols the same person? Let me die of happiness. Thank you. It seemed that Leader Jay couldn't resist this enthusiasm. Later on, this half-elf girl coaxed and coaxed to obtain a position in the fantasy circus to do odd jobs. The moving Cirque du Soleil quietly moved away from the Holy Land in the night. The giant golden whale of light finally jumped into the sea of clouds and then disappeared. The golden sea in the sacred land also gradually dissipated. The King of Heaven strolled on the streets of the sacred land and walked to a bench. Seeing the King of Swords resting with his eyes closed, he directly said, "Let's have a drink." The King of Swords didn't respond. The King of Heaven blinked his eyes tentatively and said, "My treat." The King of Swords opened his eyes and simply said, "Okay." The giant whale of light surged in the sea of clouds, but it was already far away from the sacred land and was heading toward the horizon where the rising sun set. On the moon, stars began to appear. Boss Luo slowly stretched and opened a golden page in his hand. Eternal calendar, the 10th day of the bloody moon, rainy. Today, Angelique's sister Huang will be executed. Oh no, it's the day of her execution. But I don't understand. Clearly, Angelique's sister Huang is just crying out of joy. Why do they say that today is the day of her public execution? Clearly, everyone is so happy today. But I'm not happy. I'm sick and dizzy, so I can't even attend Sister Huang's birthday party. I really want to see Sister Huang wear a rabbit costume. She's usually fierce, even fiercer than the court teachers. I really didn't expect Sister Huang to wear a rabbit costume. She must be very cute. Brother, it's already so late, but he didn't come to see me. He must have gone crazy at Sister Huang's party. Humph, I'm going to ignore brother for 3 days. Let's just wait for 2 days. Forget it, today is Sister Huang's birthday, so I'll forgive her for now. I'll let her be the protagonist for 1 day. I'm sleepy again. I always feel sleepy in the end. Tomorrow. Can I wake up tomorrow? Finally, the sacred land purged the night barracks. In the prison. Is there anyone? I'm still here. Let me out. Let me out. The Witch of Turbidity shouted until her throat was hoarse. Chapter 2245. Help! Ah, it didn't fall down this time? Yulia rubbed her chin in confusion. She was currently sitting on Madanzo's body, while Madanzo was safely lying on the ground. On the other hand, Sister Serene was leaning on the side safely. How long do you plan to sit there? This is a benefit for you, senpai. Yulia blinked her large eyes without saying anything else. I'm sorry, but I'm an angel. I don't have a gender, so I can't enjoy this kind of benefit. How pitiful. This time, their opening was surprisingly good. They didn't fall into a dangerous environment. After landing, the escaping duo quickly checked their own conditions. This page world doesn't restrict supernatural abilities, Yulia frowned. But the power limit is very high. Madanzo thought for a bit. The power I can use right now isn't even 1/10 of the power of the previous page world. I'm not affected that much. Yulia shrugged. My ability to turn into mist is basically unaffected. Star creation. Star creation has become a lot more difficult. There's no need to think about becoming a temple giant like the one in the Wraith realm. I can probably only become a trash can shooter. That's a good thing, I suppose. The experienced Madanzo thought for a bit and said, since the upper limit is so low, it means that the supernatural power of this page world won't be able to destroy the world. It's very safe. Yes, senior sister. Yulia nodded slowly and let out a sigh of relief. Then a red light flew out from the top of their heads and shot directly into a dark mountain in the distance. In an instant, the dark mountain was destroyed, and a huge mushroom cloud rose to the sky. The dark clouds in the sky suddenly gathered to form a vortex, after which a huge creature with a strange shape slowly descended from the vortex. At the same time, on the ground, huge cannonballs were shooting towards the strange creatures with smoke trailing behind them. However, the cannonballs were easily blocked by the beehive-shaped barrier around the strange creatures. At this time, the strange creature opened its mouth and shot out another red light. Then, another mountain shattered and another mushroom cloud rose. What a guy! Yulia gasped and pinched Madanzo's face. What the F***CK? Suddenly, a strong gust of wind descended and a black helicopter flew towards them. The lights instantly shone on Madanzo and the others. Why are you still standing on the ground? The 99th impact had already begun, so it was best to enter the shelter as soon as possible. Do you want to die? Death. Of course, he didn't want to die. Senior sister and Madanzo did not say anything. Under the guidance and help of the guards, they entered a nearby underground shelter. The shelter was full of people, men and women, old and young. All of them looked terrified. The tremors from time to time made the atmosphere even more solemn. Yulia passed by the crowd and took a lollipop from a naughty kid. Then, she used the lollipop to exchange for half an hour of reading on a tablet computer from another naughty kid. After settling Sister Serene down for the time being, the escaping duo squatted down and started to understand the relatively safe page world through the tablet. News information floated on the screen. Impact, messenger. Huge combat weapon. Shelter. Tsang Lei, who was severely injured in the 97th and 98th impacts, is recovering. Messenger Zero's whereabouts are still unknown. 99th impact appeared. The two of them did not even blink their eyes. Since they were both people who had developed their spirit power, they quickly digested the information they received. The main thing was that the half an hour of reading was over and the naughty kid came to snatch the tablet computer back. This world has almost no supernatural powers, but the humans have developed combat weapons to fight against the invading messengers from the alternate dimension. They have successfully resisted 99 impacts. This place is just a medium-sized city. Fortunately, a combat weapon, God Eater, passed by and is currently resisting the 99th impact. As for this God Eater, it was originally sent to the second upper capital to participate in the search for Messenger, though the picture of Messenger Zero circulating on the internet. Does it look like it? It's hard to say. I can't see it clearly at all. The two of them discuss softly. After an unknown amount of time, the commotion outside the shelter seemed to have stopped. Then, the lights turned on and a screen slowly descended. On the screen, the messenger of the 99th impact had collapsed to the ground. The giant combat weapon, God Eater, named Curlet, had lost an arm. The screen flickered. A young girl with a ponytail and a dignified appearance appeared in front of everyone's eyes. I am Curlet, as pilot. Meshi, the young girl in front of the screen, slowly spoke. The 99th impact has ended. Victory still belongs to us. All of you can now leave the shelter and enjoy the sunlight. Everyone cheered, but Madanzo and senior sister, Yulia, were currently staring blankly at the screen. The senior sister instinctively asked, Senior, what is this combat weapon called again? Curlet, Curlet. Senior sister, Yulia, couldn't help but mutter. Could it be we've returned to the pages of the Wraith Realm? The giant combat weapon on the screen was exactly the same as the Dawn equipment that appeared in the final battle of the Wraith Realm. I'm afraid not. Madanzo shook her head, but perhaps there is some sort of unknown connection. Curlet didn't stop and was quickly put into a special transport box to head to the second upper capital. After all, it was only passing by this place and casually dealt with the 99th impact. Senior sister, Yulia, and Madanzo didn't manage to board the express train to the second upper capital. The track had already been broken by the 99th impact, so it would probably be hard to repair in a short period of time. Everyone began to clean up this destroyed city. Fortunately, the impact rarely appeared in the same place twice. Of course, if the envoy brought by the impact wasn't dealt with in time, it would still move around. On the main street, senior sister, Yulia, and Madanzo began to replenish their knowledge about this new page world. Did you see that? That's the power of the God Eater. It easily defeated the envoy. That's also because of pilot Meshi-san's abilities. She's the ace pilot of Waylai City as Pilot Academy. You think you can control the God Eater just because you have hands? First, you have to enter one of the 3 pilot academies to receive training. No, I just got the admission permit to the second upper capital's Pilot Academy. What? We agreed to be idle fish together, but you actually applied for the Pilot Academy when I wasn't paying attention. The two youths walked by together. Senior sister and Madanzo looked at each other. Senior sister blinked her eyes and said, Arrangements? The car drove slowly on the road. At this moment, Ludic was sitting comfortably in the back seat while reading the news. Oh, the 99th impact battle is over. It was dealt with by a passing God Eater driver. According to the route, it should be Miss Meshi. The voice came from the driver in the front. It was a guy who Ludic had the urge to take off his Qingtian doll at present. This Qingtian doll was temporarily Ludic's full-time driver. Miss Meshi? Ludic asked curiously. Have you seen this Meshi doll? The driver, Qingtian doll, smiled and said, I often see her on the TV news, and there are many reports about Miss Meshi doll's private life in the gossip news. After all, not only is she an ace pilot, but she's also a beautiful girl. Naturally, she receives unprecedented attention. Ludic shook his head and said casually, Is there still no news about Zero's messenger recently? It had been 4 days since he treated Kay, or Lily, who was tricked by Calvin and became a Songlei pilot. During these 4 days, almost all the people in the second upper capital were dispatched, but they still didn't find any trace of the mysterious Zero messenger. It even made people wonder if Zero had left the second upper capital. Tomorrow, Kate or Lily could be discharged from the hospital. Should I go and pick her up? After all, in this terrible world, they depended on each other. As for the principal of the pilot school, Scholar Calvin, he was temporarily classified as a dangerous person by Ludic. Sir, we're here. The car slowly stopped, and the driver, Chindandal, said indifferently, "Just like yesterday, I'll wait for you here. Just like yesterday, I'll come down after the door is closed." Ludic shrugged, opened the door, and walked out. In the past few days, he had been trying to get in touch with a girl. The girl who was supposed to be Isong Lei, pilot, and participate in the 97th and 98th attack. However, her position was replaced by Kay or Lily by Calvin. It seemed that because of this, the girl who felt the dark side of power had a conflicted feeling in her heart, so she didn't go to school. Ludic's identity was the girl's homeroom teacher. These days, he was here to do psychological counseling. However, it's really hard to deal with an adolescent girl. Stepping on the stairs of the apartment, Ludic shook his head helplessly. He used to be the most handsome man in the capital of Freedom Academy more than 10 years ago, but now he was no longer attracted to little girls. After pressing the doorbell, there was no sound from the apartment for a long time. Ludic didn't intend to force the door open today. As an educator, he knew that the most important thing to deal with problematic students was patience. As long as he persisted in visiting every day, he would be able to gain the initial trust of the students. Anyway, he had a lot of time. According to the old man Calvin, even if he spent his whole life in the page world of the Book of Gaia, not much time would pass after he left. It could be a few days or a few weeks. Ludic returned to the car again. Still 5 minutes, no more, no less. The driver, Mr. Chintian, looked at his watch and praised, "Mr. Ludic, you are really a master of time management. So, where do you want to go next? Back to school?" "I want to go to the flower shop." Ludic chuckled. "Is there a shop selling roses nearby?" Due to the existence of the impact, the mountain was not too rich. Some items that were abundant in peacetime had become extremely scarce now. Due to the large-scale disappearance of arable land, Ludic's plan to find roses eventually failed. Mr. Chintian told him that flowers were completely in the ranks of luxury goods, even in the second Shanjing. In the end, he could only buy some rose seed from an old goods dealer. "By the way, I heard that there will be a group of new students tomorrow. Mr. Ludic, you should rest early tonight. I want to accompany you to the izakaya." "What a pity. She's such a charming lady boss." "Mr. Ludic, it seems that you are already very used to the life here. I have to enjoy myself. Maybe the 100th impact will appear tomorrow." "Forget it. Please send me to Principal Calvin's dormitory." "Yes, sir." "What is this?" "Roses. I didn't buy the finished product. I only bought some seeds." Ludic put the pot with the seeds on the table and said, "Remember to water it." "Boring." Scholar Calvin frowned and ignored him. His desk was a mess, filled with all kinds of books and scribbles. Even at this moment, he was still scribbling and drawing. "K.R. Lily will be discharged tomorrow. Do you want to go with me to pick her up?" "She could have been discharged long ago. You made her stay in the ward for a few more days. You wasted a few days. I remember this child. In the past, she was forced by Earthies to clean your house as a volunteer many times. In this child's heart, you are a great scholar, a wise man with profound knowledge. I can only spare an hour. So what are you busy with?" Ludic picked up a piece of paper that Calvin did not write and looked at it. "What is this, the design of the God Eater?" Calvin snatched the paper back and said indifferently, "I want to absorb as much knowledge as possible here. I have studied it. With the technology of the Free City, I may be able to create a God Eater with similar performance." "To deal with the outer gods?" Ludic shook his head and lay lazily on the table. "You're really sparing no effort. Do you think I can count on you?" Scholar Calvin snorted coldly. "If you can do one thing wholeheartedly, then you'll do it. I'm already a salted fish." In the evening, Kurlit successfully arrived at second Shanjing. Into chapter 2246. It didn't look much different from an ordinary school, except for the fact that it was surprisingly large. However, it was indeed one of the 3 schools that trained God Eater drivers. Well, the new student registration office should be in this direction. Yulia and Medanzo were looking for a way in the driver academy. Yulia was still using the name Yulia, while Medanzo was using a pseudonym. To be precise, she was using the name on the admission notice, the name of the young man who abandoned his dream of being a salted fish with his friends and secretly enrolled in the Driver Academy. It was already the third day after the 99th breakthrough. With their remaining ability, they finally arrived at second Shangjing and made it in time for the deadline of the admission notice. By the way, how long do you think it will take to meet our male and female protagonists? Madanzo said thoughtfully. Yulia smiled casually. I don't know how long it will take, but I'm sure they won't appear in front of us now. Senpai, why don't you make more jokes like that in the future? Metatro gasped, and his eyes lit up. The two rubbed their eyes almost at the same time, then jumped into the flower trough by the roadside without saying a word, and then carefully poked their heads out. They really appeared in front of us. He wore very ordinary black glasses and sat alone on a bench next to the playground. He stared blankly at the students who were playing on the court. A few sparrows were playing around his feet, as if they were not afraid at all. Hi. Hello. Suddenly, a girl and a boy who looked like he hadn't graduated from primary school came over. The young man with the black glasses slowly turned his head, and a hint of doubt appeared in his eyes. The girl calmed down and said, Hello. My name is Yulia, and this is Shinji. We're new students. Can you tell us how to get to the new student registration office? Thank you very much. I see. The young man with black glasses smiled. But I'm also looking for this place. You too? Senpai, Yulia, froze for a moment and subconsciously looked at Shinji Madanzo. Shinji was the name on the notice. Hello. The young man with black glasses smiled and said, My name is Zhu. I'm also a new student, and I got lost here. Getting lost or something. Yulia opened her mouth and immediately grabbed Madanzo's collar. Classmate, wait. With that, she carried Madanzo and ran to the side. The two of them squatted down and whispered to each other. It's not letters this time. Senior, I heard it. So, he's not the Rose emissary? You can't brazenly come to the driver's school when you're wanted all over the world, right? Moreover, the photo of Zero's messenger that is circulating on the internet is blurry. It only looks like the outline of his face. Maybe it's just our first impression, but he's also a freshman. He's full of flags. Senior, we can't be sure if he's the Zero's emissary, but the one in front of us can't be wrong. Do you know what this means? What? I finally snuck in, oh my god. For Zhu, this combination of a girl and a boy was probably a very interesting combination. He was still sitting quietly on the bench by the field, looking at the actions of this pair not far away with interest, until this pair came again. Zhu, classmate, senior's sister, Yulia, cleared her throat and said, Why don't you come with us to the new student registration office? Okay, Zhu agreed without thinking. A lot of words that he had prepared were stuck in his mouth. Yulia didn't expect it to be so simple, so she asked in surprise, Is there no problem? What problem? Zhu asked curiously. No. Then let's go together. Yulia nodded. Excuse me. Suddenly, a crisp voice sounded. They turned around and saw a tall girl with a ponytail with a dignified and serious face. The girl seemed to be wearing a school uniform, a uniform that was different from the uniform of the students in this pilot school. At this moment, the girl walked over quickly. Yulia and Madanzo were stunned. This girl was the pilot of Kurlet that they saw on the screen in the shelter that day, Ms. Meshi. Hello, I'm here as an exchange student. Can you tell me how to get to the new student registration office? The girl asked politely. Although her expression was still serious, she was a big sister with a very classical charm. I feel like I'm going to eat dinner. Yulia muttered to herself. What a coincidence. The door of the new student registration office was slowly pushed open, and Mr. Ludik, who looked sleepy, walked in slowly. Sensei Ludik, you're here. The office director said with a smile, There are 4 new students here. They will be in your class from today onward. I hope you can take good care of them. Only then did he look at the 4 new students that the dean had mentioned. When he saw one of the girls, he couldn't help but show a surprised expression. You. Ludik walked toward Yulia subconsciously. Yulia introduced herself calmly. Hello, Sensei Ludik. My name is Yulia. Ludik couldn't help but stop. He nodded and said calmly, Hello. At this time, the office director said, "The youngest one is called Shinji, and this one is called Juju. And this one, I don't think I need to introduce her, right? Ms. Meshi." Ludic nodded. "The ace pilot of New God's Capital Academy. I've heard a lot about you. I heard that Ms. Meshi will stay here as an exchange student. I didn't expect you to come to my class. I have mixed feelings. Hello, Mr. Ludic." The girl didn't smile, but she politely extended her hand to greet him. After a simple introduction, the 4 freshmen were handed over to Ludic. He would be in charge of the students' lives. Of course, the person he would focus on was obviously the extremely famous Miss Meshi. "This is Shinji, this is Yulia, and this is Zhu. And this one, I don't think I need to introduce her, right?" Ludic took the 4 new students to the classroom. Suddenly, the students in the class cheered wildly. After they calmed down and arranged seats for the new students, the class officially started. When the class finally ended, Ms. Meshi was surrounded by the students like a star. She calmly dealt with these enthusiastic students. Her performance was almost perfect, except that she didn't smile. This kind of real-time feeling of a campus gala game. Senior sister, Yulia, slowly sighed and muttered, "I'm also a beautiful girl, okay? Speaking of which, I didn't expect her to be here too." She looked at the second-to-last seat near the window. A girl with a bandage on her arm and a bandage on her neck and a bandage on her forehead was sitting there. The girl had a strange expression on her face. She looked surprised and hesitant. Kate Air Lily, the maid of Mr. Asak's in Rose Mansion. It seemed that she was hesitating whether to come over and ask about him. Yulia pondered for a bit. Just as she was about to take the initiative to approach, the back door of the classroom suddenly opened. She saw Mr. Ludic standing there at this time. He waved his hand and said, "Student Yulia, come out for a second. I have some things to verify with you regarding admission." It was a very reasonable reason, so almost no one cared. The senior nodded directly, and then made a brief but informative eye contact with Madanzo before leaving with Mr. Ludic. At this time, the injured girl sitting in the second-to-last seat by the window suddenly left her seat. Then she came to Zhu and hesitated for a moment. "Mr. Luo, is that you?" Madanzo was sitting next to. Hearing this, Madanzo couldn't help but blink. She had been using the image of Yulia until now. Since she used the identity of Yulia, she naturally knew about Ludic's identity. "Yulia, do you know who I am?" At the stairs behind the teaching building, Mr. Ludic asked seriously. "Hello, Principal." Yulia calmed down and said in a steady tone, "I didn't expect to meet you here, but I'm not surprised." Mr. Ludic shook his head. "Do you know why?" Yulia said, "Is it because K. Air Lily is also here?" "K. Air Lily?" Ludic was stunned. "You can say that, but if I remember correctly, you don't know K. Air Lily, right?" Yulia said calmly, "Principal, did you forget that we already met at the final party in the dressing room backstage? It should be just a quick meeting, but you already remembered it." Mr. Ludic smiled. "As expected of you. You've always been so outstanding. It's much easier to talk like this." "Principal, I have a lot of questions." Mr. Ludic waved his hand to stop her. "Before answering your questions, I want to know, apart from Miss Maisie, what's your relationship with the other 2 freshmen?" "Them? I met you after I came to school, and Shinji on the way." Yulia shook her head. "I don't know them." Mr. Ludic looked at her and didn't seem to find anything, so he nodded and said, "I see. Well, Yulia, I probably know what your questions are, but I'm afraid it's not the time to talk about it. Wait for the evening. I will introduce someone to you at night. At that time, your questions will be answered." "Who is it?" "Great scholar, Calvin." Ludic said seriously. "Mr. Luo, is that you?" The injured girl even showed a hint of excitement. But Zhu's reaction was extremely calm. He said calmly, "My name is Zhu. Hello. How could it be? You are..." Maybe it was because she couldn't hide her excitement. The injured girl even directly grabbed his wrist. It seemed that she used quite a lot of strength. But Zhu, with black glasses, was still calm at this time, and he didn't even have any instinctive reaction to the injured girl's excessive action. He only moved his eyeballs a little. The injured girl. K. Forehead Lily quickly let go of her hand and said subconsciously, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. How could I forget? Mr. Luo has a scary Missy you with him. That miss doesn't seem to like people getting too close to Mr. Luo. Looking at K forehead Lily, who seemed to be a little frightened, Zhu suddenly asked, "You seem to be afraid of something." No. K forehead Lily shook her head. Zhu thought for a while and said, "Why did you dress up like this?" K forehead Lily said subconsciously, "What?" Zhu said calmly, "Your body should not be injured." This was the agreement with Mr. Ludick. She couldn't expose the fact that she had completely recovered, but he found it with just a glance. Sure enough, was it Mr. Luo? It felt like it, but not like it at the same time. K forehead Lily, if you hear this, please go to the principal's office immediately. K forehead Lily. At this time, the campus broadcast suddenly sounded. The noise in the class calmed down, and everyone looked at the injured girl. In this class, except for the new exchange student, Miss Meshi, who was an official pilot of God Eater, K forehead Lily was also an official pilot. She had successfully piloted Song Lei in battle once and survived. I'll find you later. K forehead Lily whispered and walked out of the classroom quickly. At this time, Yulia happened to come back, and the two passed by. K forehead Lily nodded with a complicated expression, but didn't say anything and left quickly with her head down. But K forehead Lily didn't come back until school was over. After school, Ludick called several freshmen in front of him. "Your dormitories have been arranged. I'll take you there now. Miss Meshi, you can continue to live in a place arranged by the military or in our dormitory. It's up to you. The dormitory in the military is not very convenient for me to come to school." Meshi said indifferently, "I'll stay in your dormitory." Understood. Ludick nodded, then get in the car. A 7-seater car slowly drove over, and then a driver wearing a Qingtian doll head mask appeared in front of everyone. Ludick said indifferently, "Let's go, it's still the same dormitory today." When they got in the car, Mr. Ludick secretly gave Yulia a small note with a later time written on it. He looked like an old scumbag who wanted to screw female students. End of chapter. Chapter 2247. The dormitory building wasn't far from the school. If they walked, it would take about 20 minutes to reach the driving school. Ludick assigned the dormitory keys to the freshmen downstairs. Then he reminded them of some things they needed to pay attention to and left directly. Then, "See you tomorrow, everyone." The first person to leave after saying goodbye was Juju. This guy walked into the elevator casually with empty hands. Senior Yulia couldn't find a good opportunity to talk to Juju along the way. But since they had already met, it didn't seem to be a problem for them to talk to each other. "Gentlemen, it's nice to meet you." At this moment, Miss Meshi also greeted them. "Then, since we're classmates, let's get along well tomorrow. Just treat me as an ordinary student." Although it was a polite remark, it wasn't sincere at all. Senior sister, Yulia, was a smooth and slick person. She smiled and said, "If you can let me ride Kale Lot once, we'll be good friends." It was just a joke. However, Miss Meshi unexpectedly said seriously, "I'm afraid it's a bit difficult. The cockpit of the God Eater has a lock program. If an unrecognized person enters, the cockpit will directly release a fatal gas. But if you really want to feel it, it's not impossible. As long as you wear a gas mask or something like that in advance, it might be possible, but I've never tried it, so I don't know if it works. Maybe I'll give you an answer after I try it. Is that okay?" Senior sister, Yulia, blinked her eyes. Why does he look like he wants to make friends, but doesn't know how to make friends? Well, I'm just saying it casually. Senior Yulia smiled embarrassedly. Miss Meshi stepped forward and suddenly grabbed her hands. Then, she said very seriously, "You're the first one who wants to be friends with me. If you're a friend, you have to learn how to share." Yulia felt a strong aura of a dating game. Senior sister, Yulia, immediately exclaimed in her heart, "Good heavens, could it be that I'm carrying the template of the little buttermale lead? A. Promise Meshi to be her friend and sleep with Meshi tonight to increase her favorability. B. Keep a distance from Meshi and play hard to get. Actually, everyone is tired today. Why don't we all go back to our rooms and rest?" Yulia decisively chose option B in her mind. If there's anything, we'll talk about it tomorrow. The main reason was that she had an appointment with Ludic, and there was a big main storyline waiting for her to solve. Tonight was really not a good time to sleep with Meshi. Well, sleep with Meshi. You're right. Miss Meshi nodded in disappointment. I still have a report to write. See you tomorrow, after midnight, in the dormitory's common room. Yulia was preparing to sneak out of the dormitory. As for Madanzo Shinji, she acted as a watcher and paid attention to Jutsu's every move. Then, Senpai, I'll go meet Ludic and see what's going on. Senpai, are you listening to me? What are you looking at? So there's another student living here besides us. Madanzo pointed at the room number on the wall and said, that's the room at the end of the corridor on the 5th floor. However, the room number only showed that it was occupied. For the time being, they didn't know who was living inside. If it's a student dormitory, it should be reasonable if there's already a student living here. Yulia didn't think too much about it. After saying hello, she quietly opened the window and floated out. Madanzo shrugged and suddenly walked to the window and said in a low voice, Yulia's favorite drink is Bailey's liqueur. Remember that. What? Nothing, good luck. Madanzo waved the rag. She picked up and waved it. Yulia had already disappeared into the night. Madanzo Shinji leisurely rested his head on the window and looked at the night sky. No one knew what he was thinking. At this time, a light sound came from above. It seemed to be the sound of a piano. More than 10 days had passed since the 97th and 98th impacts. As for the 99th impact, it appeared in a medium-sized shelter city quite far away from Second Upper Capital. Therefore, Second Upper Capital had already lifted the curfew. Although many parts of the city were still dealing with the damage, it didn't stop the rich nightlife. Perhaps people needed a place where they could release the fear in their hearts. This was a relatively quiet bar, and it was very suitable for people to quietly stay here and heal their wounds. In the corner of the bar, Mr. Ludic was smoking tobacco that contained large amounts of hemp. On the table, there were all kinds of drinks. Almost all the types of drinks in this bar were sent here. This made Calvin University, who was sitting at the side, frown. Even if this is the world of pages, you have to pay attention to your identity, Grand Scholar Calvin said coldly. Because this is the world of pages, I don't intend to pay attention to my identity. Mr. Ludic shrugged. Teacher, did you forget that I was a bad student since I was young? Grand Scholar Calvin was silent for a moment and then said slowly, You have seen those freshmen today. What do you think? Ludic thought for a moment and said, Which one do you want me to think about? Grand Scholar Calvin said seriously, The guy named... Ludic said, The pilot school has detectors that can detect the magnetic field of messengers. If he is the messenger of Zero, why didn't they detect it? Also, why would a messenger of Zero come to the pilot school? Is he bored? That kind of power that could directly blow up Songlei can do whatever he wants, right? Does he still need to be a spy? But he is too similar. Grand Scholar Calvin shook his head. If he is similar, Mr. Ludic suddenly said, Before we entered the world of pages, several guests came to Asish's Rose Mansion. One of them is the real one. What did you say? Grand Scholar Calvin frowned. Mr. Ludic said, Teacher, you have seen him. At the final party of the Holy Maiden ceremony, he was also a judge, sitting next to Isabel. Have you forgotten? Grand Scholar Calvin frowned deeper and shook his head subconsciously. There was indeed someone sitting next to Isabel, but I can't remember what he looked like. Can't remember? Ludic was stunned. If it was that guy, even if he only met him once, it would be hard to forget. That kind of special temperament. A whistling sound suddenly rang out in the bar, interrupting the conversation between the two. They subconsciously looked over and saw a young girl looking for someone standing in the lobby of the bar. The girl's eyes quickly met with Ludic's, and then she quickly walked over. Principal in. Yulia calmed down and slowly said, Mr. Calvin, sit down. Mr. Ludic picked up a wine glass with one hand and a cigarette between his fingers. He looked like a gangster boss, and there were only two girls with revealing clothes on his left and right. Take whatever you want to drink. Relax here. If you're not used to it, you can sit on my lap. Principal, you are really good at joking. Yulia smiled calmly and casually picked up a milk-colored drink from the dozens of glasses on the table. Yulia, I remember you don't drink, right? Mr. Ludick suddenly smiled and said, as a candidate for the Holy Maiden, this is against the rules. Moreover, you're in front of me, the principal. Is it really okay? The senior apprentice sister drank more than half of the wine in her cup. Then, she slowly sighed and said faintly, I want to calm down. Here, I can't even pray. Sometimes, I have to wonder if what I experienced was just a nightmare. Maybe I can wake up if I get drunk. Ludick glanced at Grand Scholar Calvin. Grand Scholar Calvin slowly said, even the Holy Maiden doesn't prohibit drinking. You don't have to care about Ludick's words. Yulia showed a forced smile. Okay, let's get down to business. Mr. Ludick patted his cheeks at this time, and he looked a lot more energetic. First, we will exchange information. Yulia, tell us everything that happened after you came to this world. The senior didn't bargain. She slowly said the words that she prepared on the way here. She came from an ordinary family. Her parents died in the shock, and she grew up alone in the orphanage. After she grew up, she successfully got into the driving school in Second Shanjing and came here. I clearly know that these life trajectories don't belong to me, but the strange thing is that they seem to have really happened to me. Yulia smiled bitterly and said, to be honest, before I met you, I even wondered which one was the real me. Was the Freedom City just a dream? There is no doubt that you're the real you in the Freedom City. Grand Scholar Calvin said calmly, this is called role replacement. You just replaced a role that originally existed here. Don't worry. After you leave, this feeling of confusion will slowly fade away. Leave? Yulia looked excited. Mr. Calvin, you know the way to go back? She even stood up excitedly, attracting the attention of the customers around her. Grand Scholar Calvin signaled for her to calm down. I'm sorry, but I don't have the method to leave this place. But as for how to return to the real world, I know the general direction. The senior looked at Mr. Ludick subconsciously. Yulia, Ludick said slowly, if possible, I hope you can try your best to get in touch with this person in Jewtown. You wanting to mess with the boss's image? His fingers danced on the black and white piano keys smoothly and skillfully. Under the night sky, on the roof of the dormitory building, a young boy was sitting in front of an old white piano and playing. However, the music suddenly stopped, and the young boy's fingers were still on the black and white piano keys. He looked back and saw a young man with black glasses standing beside the old piano. Zhu Town, did I disturb you? Zhu Town looked at this young boy and asked softly. Shinji, the young boy who officially became his classmate more than 10 hours ago, sat with him. He seemed to be very interested in everything about this young boy. Shinji. He was interested in everything in this world. I can't play anymore. Madanzo shook her head. I haven't played for a long time, and I forgot the second part. That's a pity. Zhu Tao nodded. Such a beautiful sound. But it seems different from the first and second parts. Because there are two people playing the piano, Madanzo shrugged. When I came up, I seemed to have scared away the people who were here. Zhu Town blinked and asked, what kind of people? I didn't see them clearly. They were hiding from me, Madanzo said casually. Zhu Town didn't seem to want to ask more. He walked to the piano and pressed his fingers on the white keys, and the music sounded in the night sky, and then disappeared. Are you interested? Madanzo tilted her head. Can you teach me? Zhu Tao nodded. The sound just now. Madanzo just chuckled and moved her body, leaving more than half of the piano stool empty. Come on, I can't sleep anyway. Thank you. The piano began to play intermittently. Madanzo's teaching method was very perfunctory. She just let him remember where his fingers fell. However, Zhu Town learned fast, or in other words, he easily remembered all the fingers. You learn fast. Madanzo couldn't help narrowing her eyes. Zhu Town shook his head. It's different from your sound. Madanzo said indifferently. For the piano, the sound of the right position is the same. Zhu Town thought for a moment and said, it should be my problem. But anyway, thank you for teaching me this. I should be very happy now. Madanzo just smiled, and her fingers began to move skillfully on the piano keys again. She probably remembered the place where she stopped before. He sat next to her and listened quietly. At this time, Metatro suddenly said, "Mr. Juju, maybe I'm here because I want to meet you. What about you? Do you have anyone you want to meet?" "I don't know." Zhu Town shook his head. "Mass and B minor." Medanzo smiled. Zhu Town showed a confused look. "The name of this song," Medanzo whispered. "Mass and B minor." End of this chapter. Chapter 2248. Senpai, are you awake? I'm going to wear it. Remember to put on your clothes. Senpai Yulia stood in front of the door of the dormitory. She had been waiting here for 5 minutes, but there was no response. She came back around dawn. Basically, she spent the whole night exchanging information with Ludic and the others. Calvin and Ludic did not hide her speculation about the outer gods. This part of the information was actually related to the truth of the Holy Light Kingdom. But if it was the real Yulia as a candidate for the Holy Maiden, and even one of the new Holy Maidens, she could actually come into contact with some of these things. Therefore, the exchange of information for the whole night was unexpectedly smooth. At least, Ludic and Calvin did not doubt her identity. As for the history of the Celtic gods, which had become the history of the dimensional void, Senpai Yulia did not know much. But she had heard about it. After all, in the dimensional void, there was no lack of places like the Adventurer's Tavern that could spread information. However, Senpai was not optimistic about Morgan's revenge. What a joke. The Divine Army had destroyed many old and new gods, and no one had heard of a successful revenge. It seems that she's really not here. Where did she go? Senpai Yulia hesitated for a moment and gave up the idea of continuing to knock on the door. She went downstairs. Downstairs, the ace pilot exchange student from another school, Meshi, was standing at the door. She seemed to be waiting. "Miss." "Meshi?" "Just call me Meshi." "What are you doing?" "I just came downstairs." The girl with a ponytail showed a slightly stiff smile. "What a coincidence. Why don't we walk together? It's the way to school." Senpai Yulia blinked on the spot. A. Agree to Meshi's request. Favorability +2. B. Rejected Meshi's request and splashed milk on her skirt. Favorability -20 RN. TU curious about the origin of the +2 and -10. Yes, that's right. These values really did appear after the A and B options. Since last night? No, since she came back this morning, senior sister, Yulia, had confirmed one thing. This was a page world with options. Ludic and Grand Scholar Calvin could also see the options. As for Medanzo, senior 11th, Yulia hadn't been confirmed yet, but it should be close. Yulia, classmate? I'll definitely choose A. Greeting passersby. Passersby's favorability +1. Feeding a stray cat by the roadside. Favorability +5. She lifted her skirt and showed it to the homeless man. Indecent assault triggered. Sin +10. Meshi's favorability -10. Pervert's favorability +10,086. On the road, more and more people had options above their heads. It was as if a dialogue box had appeared above everyone's head. A dialogue box that only she could see. After the 99th occurrence, until they arrived at second Shangjing, such an option didn't appear. The first time it appeared was with Meshi. So, this page world was really a dating game world, right? So, Yulia, you're an orphan? Meshi turned her head and looked at her. The ponytail girl's side profile was almost perfect. Actually, as a Holy Maiden candidate, Yulia wasn't bad either. The two of them walked on the road, and with the support of the female student uniform, it was very difficult to look back. Hey, tell Meshi about your loneliness. Meshi's compassion +10. Be strong. Lift up Meshi's skirt, prank her, and leave. Meshi's favorability -5. Meshi's shame +13. Lifting up her skirt. Isn't this the profound meaning of a primary school monk? What the hell is this shame +13? Actually, it's okay. You get used to it. Yulia sighed and said, living in such a world, it's already something to be happy about. I'll defeat all the messengers, Meshi suddenly said with a serious expression. Here it comes. Here it comes. On the way, Yulia didn't trigger any more options on Meshi's body. She let out a sigh of relief. They had arrived at the driver's school. But to her surprise, she saw Senior 11 and the target, Juju, appear at the same time in the campus. Or rather, these two guys were working together at this moment. The two of them walked side by side, talking and laughing, and they seemed to be carrying bread in their hands. It seems that they have a good relationship. Meshi said in an envious voice, Shinji-san and Jisan. Ha! Ha! That seems to be the case. Senior sister, Yulia, laughed dryly. However, she saw that Madanzo didn't seem to see her and walked directly into the school building with him. What the hell is this 11 doing? It's Meshi-san. It's really Meshi-san. I'm so happy. As expected of the ace driver of the God Eater, the students instantly killed Yulia on the way. The bell signaling the start of the class rang. The first class was history. Madanzo, Shinji, and Ju were absent-minded the whole time, and it seemed like Madanzo Shinji was teasing Ju. Meshi listened to the class attentively, but from time to time, she would look at Senpai and give affectionate smiles. Yulia's scalp went numb, and she stared blankly outside the window the whole time, showing the image of a bad student. Kate or Lily still didn't show up. After she was called out yesterday, she didn't show up again. When Ludic and the others gave them the information, they didn't explain in detail and just told her not to worry. The second class. The two of them continued to be absent-minded, and their love was burning. Meshi's eyes were burning. I'm a bad student. I'm a bad student. I'm a bad student. Kate or Lily still didn't come back. The third class. I'm a bad student. Ju, I heard that the fried noodles in the snack shop are very good. Let's go and eat. I know 100 ways to eat immortals. What are immortals? Immortals are the kind of people who can live well without eating or pooping. Then why did they invent 100 ways to eat immortals? Because they have nothing better to do. Yulia looked at the adulterous couple from the corner of her eyes and muttered. At this time, Meshi appeared in front of her with a two-tiered food box in her hand and was about to speak. Yulia blinked her eyes. Are you going to say that you accidentally made too much food when you woke up in the morning and then you happened to be on a diet and couldn't finish it? If I could share the burden with you, that would be great, right? How did you? Yulia stood up and said, Meshi, let's fight on the rooftop. Let's eat. Okay. Meshi's favorability +2. This was a world with options for outsiders. The natives of the Page world didn't seem to have such options. This was the result of Ludic and Calvin's research. A. Wipe the rice grains on the corner of Meshi's mouth and eat it yourself. Meshi's favorability +3. B. Pick up a sausage and feed it to Meshi. When your finger touches Meshi's lips, retract it and lick the finger that touches Meshi's lips. Shame +5. Heartbeat +10. Yulia, what's wrong? Why did you spit out the rice? Is the food not delicious? No. You're very delicious. The food you make is delicious. Yulia shook her head. It's just that I ate too quickly. Tomorrow, I'll make more. Meshi smiled. Yulia said, won't that be very tiring? You're a pilot and may be sent out at any time. Rest is very important, right? Meshi said in a low voice, it's a hobby. The life of a pilot is actually quite monotonous. Because I may be sent out at any time, most of the time I'm on standby. As for cooking, it's more stressful. But pilots need to control their weight. If I make too much food and can't finish it, it'll go to waste. I often feel distressed because of this. Did you often do this when you were in school? Yulia asked casually. Meshi said, it's actually hard to make friends over there. Everyone is in a competitive relationship. So, the relationship isn't very good. A. Invite Meshi to the game center next to the bus station after school to play. Meshi's favorability +3. B. Invite Meshi to the KTV next to the bus station after school to sing. Make Meshi drunk and then check into the pink hotel next to the bus station. After that, the follow-up option will be triggered. Hey, this Page world, is it the boss's little sister's feeling after playing Gale game? And it's little butter? Meshi after school. Yulia took a deep breath and said, let's go shopping. Huh? Yulia pulled up her sleeves and said, I want to cook. I'll cook noodles for you. Meshi's favorability +1. Watch out, Dash. along with the sound of something piercing through the air. Right at this moment, Meishi suddenly pounced on Senior's sister, Yulia, and directly pushed her to the ground. Her hair hit Senior sister Yulia's face. At this moment, they looked at each other. I'm not mentally prepared. Yulia blinked her eyes. At this time, Meishi's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly raised his head. Then, he directly jumped up and rushed to the water tank on the rooftop. Senior sister, Yulia, shook her head and sat up, but she looked at the arrow beside her. It was a short arrow shot from crossbow. Yulia picked up the short arrow and glanced at it. Then, she said with a frown, "Who wants to kill me? Or is it Meishi?" Soon, Meishi came back from behind the water tank with a crossbow in her hand. I didn't see the person. Only this thing was left. Meishi's expression was solemn. She had a complicated expression on her face as she looked at the crossbow in her hand. The other party wanted to sneak an attack on you? Yulia asked subconsciously. Meishi thought for a moment and said, "If this happened in my previous school, it would be normal. But in second Shangjing, it seems a bit unusual. As far as I know, I'm the only exchange student." You're saying that in your previous driving school, you often encountered assassinations? Yulia was surprised. Meishi smiled bitterly and said, "I told you it's a competition. After all, there's only one Kurlit. We have to inform the school about this." Yulia frowned. "I'll take care of this. You don't have to worry." Meishi shook her head. "It's getting late. You should go back first. I want to stay here for a while." Meishi's favorability -10. "What's going on? I didn't do anything." You're saying assassinations? In Principal Calvin's office, Mr. Ludick was lying on the sofa and smoking marijuana. He said it was much better than drinking lemon tea. At this time, Senior sister, Yulia, was sitting in front of Grand Scholar Calvin, talking about what happened on the rooftop in detail. Meishi's previous school used a teaching method similar to raising poisonous insects. Grand Scholar Calvin pondered and said, because of the school culture, the relationship between the students in that school is indeed very tense. Occasionally, there will be bloodshed. However, relatively speaking, the drivers in that school have always been very good. As far as I know, the reason why Meishi was able to become the driver of Kurlit was because she defeated all the opponents in the same class. Did she really just defeat them? Yulia frowned and asked, "I'm just the principal of the second Shangjing driving school." Grand Scholar Calvin shook his head and said, "Even if we want to investigate Meishi's past, I'm afraid that if the school doesn't cooperate, we won't know much. However, if something happens to Meishi here, it will bring a lot of trouble. However, since she chose to remain silent, we shouldn't directly intervene in this matter. For the time being, we'll just pretend that we don't know and observe in secret." Yulia didn't say anything. Grand Scholar Calvin said, "Your most important task now is to deepen the relationship with Zhu Town as soon as possible. Other things can be put aside. I saw that you didn't take any action today. Instead, that freshman named Shinji seems to have a good relationship with Zhu Town." "I know, Calvin-sama." Yulia nodded and said, "By the way, where's Miss K or Lily? I don't think I saw her today. K or Lily is participating in the debugging of Tsonglei, so she can't come here in a short period of time." Grand Scholar Calvin said indifferently, "The interval between the 3 recent impacts is very short, and the messenger of Uro is still missing. We can't do nothing." At this moment, Mr. Ludick suddenly sat up and patted his head a few times. Then, he stood up shakily and said, "I'm going to class." It seems like Ludick, the principal of City of Freedom Academy, has completely let himself go after coming to this page world. However, Grand Scholar Calvin just glanced at him expressionlessly and didn't continue to pay attention to him. "Calvin-sama, if there's nothing else, I'm going to class as well." Yulia stood up and said. "Yulia," Grand Scholar Calvin suddenly said, "during this period of time, you could try to pray. Even if you don't get any response, don't stop praying." "I'll try my best." In a corner of the campus, under the shade of the trees, they were sitting together under the scattered sunlight. Madanzo smiled and took out a palm-sized box and 2 thread-like things. Zhu Town asked curiously, "What's this?" "It's an antique called a Walkman." Madanzo chuckled and put one of the earphones into Zhu Tao's ears. You like it? The moment the voice sounded, Zhu Tao slowly closed his eyes and listened. Madanzo narrowed her eyes. Zhu Tao's favorability +1. Chapter 2249. Her favorability was steadily increasing. The assassination incident that day ended with Meshi's favorability -10. However, in the next few days, Yulia persevered and recovered the loss. Unfortunately, there was only a simple notification, and the total amount wasn't shown. In fact, Yulia didn't know what kind of positions or events could be unlocked with the favorability from Meshi. Kay or Lily still didn't appear in the past few days. Calvin would ask about Ju once a day, but Ludic was still the same. He was perfunctory in class. Senior, 11, and Ju seemed to have really become friends. Madanzo even spent the night in Ju's dormitory several times. As for Yulia and Madanzo, the thing they asked the most when they met was, "How much did you get today?" "Senior, how much did you get today?" "Not even 1 point." "Not even 1 point?" On the rooftop, Yulia couldn't help but widen her eyes. It's probably because ordinary emotions can't touch his heart anymore. Madanzo shrugged. This Ju is like a newborn. He's full of curiosity about the world, but he's growing too fast. I don't have much left. Maybe some special events can take him one step further. A special event. Senior sister, Yulia, seemed to be deep in thought. However, the break between classes was quite short. After a brief exchange, the two planned to leave. Yulia suddenly said, "I heard that the driver school is going to hold a celebration in a few days. Is this a special opportunity?" Celebration? Living in a world where the messenger was constantly attacking, life was too depressing. People needed activities that could liberate their minds. This was especially true for the driver students who bet their lives on it. The summer festival was one of the few activities where the students of the second upper capital driving school could indulge themselves in. It was similar to the campus cultural festival. Mr. Ludic was on the podium picking out the notes for the class program. The ideas provided by the students in the class were put into the box. He could pick one at will, and no complaints were allowed. Then, the program that our class has prepared for the summer festival is... Ludic slowly opened the piece of paper with the proposal written on it. He glanced at it, then turned around and wrote a few big words on the blackboard. Choir. This was obviously a relatively simple program, and there were almost no objections. Looks like everyone agrees. That makes things easier. Mr. Ludic yawned. Choir. Then, I'll prepare an activity room for everyone to train. Starting from today after school, how about it? Before school ends, if any of the students have any ideas for the chorus, they can also come and find me. Of course, you usually can't find me. Class dismissed. Seeing that the perfunctory homeroom teacher was about to leave, Zhu, who was at the back of the classroom, suddenly stood up. "What do you want to do?" Madanzo asked curiously. Zhu smiled and said, "I would like to suggest that the song for the duet should be Mass in B minor." Madanzo was stunned. "Are you serious? Is there a problem?" "Not really. This song is quite suitable for a chorus." Madanzo shook her head. "But for ordinary people, it's not a song that can be mastered in a few days, and it's not suitable." "Why?" Madanzo said indifferently. "Because there is no religion in this world. Zhu, it's good to be positive about life, but sometimes if you are too positive, you will be hated by others." "Do you?" Hearing that, Zhu sat down, but his face showed an even greater desire for knowledge. Metatro blinked and said, "If the performance fails at the summer festival, the person who suggested it will become the target of blame." Zhu blinked, thought for a moment, and said, "Shinji, you seem to be more careful than I thought." "Am I?" Madanzo replied casually. At this time, a male student in the classroom stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "Everyone, regarding the collection of songs, please hand it over to me before the lunch break. During this period of time, the class monitor hasn't come to class, so the vice class monitor will take over this matter." Hearing this, Senior Yulia couldn't help but blink her eyes. Then, she quietly turned her head to Metatro's side. "By the way, Is there a class monitor in this class? There is. Metatron narrowed his eyes and said, and he's staying in the same dormitory as us. You mean, senior sister, Yulia, couldn't help but open her mouth. The original pilot of Tsang Lei, but he was manipulated? How did you know? It's easy to find out, right? Madanzo said in annoyance. Don't ignore the huge source of information that students are. Think about what you've been doing these days. What I've been doing, increasing Meshi's favorability, increasing Meshi's favorability, increasing Meshi's favorability. Just as Senior Yulia was about to speak, she saw a figure walking by the corridor outside the classroom. Senior sister, Yulia, was stunned. She quickly walked out of the corridor, only to see that there was no one outside. What did you see? Metatro stepped forward and frowned. Silver hair. Senior Yulia murmured, It looks like a girl, but I didn't see clearly. Silver hair? Madanzo pondered. Can you smoke less? In the principal's office, Calvin frowned. He could tolerate students smoking, but he couldn't tolerate students using his office as a place to secretly smoke. This made Grand Scholar Calvin feel that his office was like a washroom. Finish this one. Ludic waved his hand weakly. He was lying on the sofa like a fish on a beach. The only thing he didn't do was roll his eyes. Calvin snorted. At this moment, the phone rang. It was the secretary outside the door. Calvin picked up the phone and frowned. He said indifferently, Okay, let her in. After that, Calvin hung up the phone. He looked at Ludic and said indifferently, She's here. It seems like your efforts have paid off. Ludic got up from the sofa and saw the office door open. A girl with long silver hair and an expressionless face wearing a driver's uniform slowly walked in. Lilia, classmate. Ignoring Ludic's surprise, Calvin looked at the cold girl with long silver hair. He put down his work and said indifferently, finally willing to come to school. Summer festival. The girl said expressionlessly. Calvin frowned and said subconsciously, You came back because of the summer festival? The girl nodded and said directly, I'm going out. After that, the girl turned around and left the principal's office. It didn't even take half a minute, as if she came here just to tell him this. This is the original driver of Tsang Lei. Ludic was startled. Speaking of which, after visiting for so many days, this is the first time I saw her in person and heard her speak. By the way, old man Calvin, why do I feel that you are a bit serious? You seem to be afraid of her? This child is not as simple as I thought. Calvin shook his head. Everyone said that I replaced her with K. E. Lily because of my power. But what you don't know is that in this school, this child's power is actually not less than mine. What situation? Student council. Calvin leaned back on the chair and pinched his eyebrows. She can actually dismiss me through the student council at any time. That's impossible. Ludic scratched his head. I don't think I've heard of the existence of the student council all this time. Nothing is impossible. Calvin smiled bitterly. This is the tradition of this school. The person who really stands at the top of this school is this child who is the president of the student council. You haven't heard of it because before you came, I put in a lot of effort to replace her with K. E. Lily. At the same time, I also made the student council quiet down. Since she came back today, those guys will probably also appear. Those guys? The pickets of the student council. Calvin sighed and said, a group made up of all the children of high-ranking officials, rich businessmen, and politicians in the second Shanjing. At this moment, the sound of the broadcast sounded in the campus. Now, I'll announce something. All classes, please send the prepared summer festival to the student council office for reporting and submit it to the student council president for review. I repeat, all classes, please. Review. Listening to the content of the broadcast, Ludic looked at Calvin with a strange expression and said, really arrogant, as if the school administration is just a decoration. No matter what, she is still a student. Calvin said sternly, and she is a student in your class. When you need to discipline her, you don't have to have any scruples. I will support you from behind. You didn't even dare to say a word of *T just now, okay? Ludic suddenly sneered and said, speaking of which, when you gave me the information and asked me to contact her, you didn't mention a word about this. You are indeed a good teacher. I have a battle meeting with the military tonight. Calvin at this time ordered him to leave. Ludic narrowed his eyes and shrugged. Before he left, he suddenly turned back and said, Kate, lilies matter. Don't go too far. I don't intend to explain anything to Asakes for you. Take care of yourself first. Calvin said indifferently, Everything I do is for the free city, as expected of a highly respected grand scholar. Who are these people? In the campus, such a group of students suddenly appeared. They wore the same black uniform and had sharp eyes. As they walked, the students avoided them and didn't dare to look directly at them. It's the pickets of the second Shangjing driving school. Pickets. Yulia looked at Meshi curiously at this time, and at the same time ignored the option to ask Meshi for a knee pillow. As an exchange student, you seem to know a lot. Meshi thought for a while and said, although they are both driving schools, there is actually a certain degree of chasing relationship between the two sides. About this second Shangjing driving school, there are a lot of rumors in my previous school. Yulia said, it can actually spread to another school. It seems that this picket team is something. What's important is not the picket team, but the person leading them. Meshi said seriously, the student council president who can really rule this driving school is a character like the Empress, and she was the original pilot of Songlei. Oh, open your mouth. Ah, Yulia chewed the sausage and asked curiously, does the student council really have a lot of power here? Meshi shook her head. I haven't experienced it personally, so I can't say, but maybe we will see it soon. Do you see that? Even the teachers in the school are submissive when they see the picket team. Speaking of which, Meshi, you seem to be very interested in this president. Yulia blinked at this time. After all, she was the pilot of Songlei. Meshi said indifferently, and after a moment of silence, she suddenly said, Yulia, have you tried to fall in love before? What? There was no option this time. Yulia didn't know how to answer it this time. Meshi said softly, Yulia, I think I'm going to fall in love. Who? Zhu classmate. Senior sister, Yulia, immediately took a deep breath. What the F asterisk CK? Hey, stop Meshi's relationship. The men in this world are all pigs, and only women are true love. If you succeed, Meshi's bond will increase by 50 points, and you will unlock the achievement. Orange in Orange Aura. B. Help Meshi's relationship. If you succeed, Meshi's affection will increase by 100 points, and you will become a bestie who can play private games with her. You will unlock the branch, threesome. Do you have some kind of F asterisk king misunderstanding about bestie? Wait, you, and you? Yulia jumped up. When did this happen? These days, she had basically been brushing up on Meishi's body. She didn't see the two of them having a chance to be alone. Did she lose her memory? Actually, last night, several students in black uniforms suddenly appeared in front of Madanzo. Your Shinji classmate, right? Madanzo rubbed her chin and asked curiously, What's the matter? The leading student said indifferently, Please come with me to the student council office. The student council president wants to talk to you. Metatro subconsciously glanced at Zhu beside him, shrugged and said, Then I'll leave for a while. And this Zhu, classmate, please come with us. The leading student said again, This is also the president's idea. Chapter 2250. The girl sat in front of the huge desk, and there were at least 10 members of the picket team standing on both sides. You want me to be the pianist? Madanzo was surprised. The picket team brought him here with a big entourage, but when he walked into the president's office, he was told that they were here for the summer festival. Can I? The girl asked expressionlessly. It's not that you can't. I'm just curious about the reason. Madanzo shook his head. You played well. The girl with long silver hair said slowly, I heard it. So, the white piano on the roof of the dorm was put there by you? You were the one who played the piano on the first night, right? Madanzo was actually a little absent-minded. He was secretly observing the reaction of the student president and Zhu. There was nothing unusual about these two guys. It shouldn't be. The male and female protagonists of the page world had already met, but nothing happened. This made Madanzo reconsider the difficulty of this page world. Due to some personal reasons, I can't participate in the class performance. but I hope that my class can get a good result. The girl said slowly. If that's the case, I have no problem. Madanzo thought for a while and said, How about Juju? President, do you have tasks for him? No. The girl shook her head. Madanzo couldn't help but wonder, President, why did you ask Zhu Sun and me to come here together? Just for a formal meeting. The girl said indifferently, Since you've met and the matter is settled, you can go back. Metatro subconsciously looked at Zhu beside him, but he saw that Zhu wasn't angry because of this. Instead, it was very casual. Madanzo was a little confused, but he didn't want to rush. Then, excuse me. The member of the picket team was a slightly gloomy guy, and his collar even blocked his mouth. After Shinji and Zhu left, the member of the picket team picked up a notebook and walked to the girl with long silver hair. Guild leader, I'd like to report the recent events to you. Ever since you left, Calvin has greatly reduced the student council's funds and removed 5 rules, namely, show. A girl in the picket team suddenly made a shushing gesture. The members of the picket team were startled, but the girl quietly pointed at the silver-haired girl in the chair and whispered, The president is asleep. Don't disturb her. The disciplinary committee member was silent for a moment. Then he closed the notebook in his hand. He waved his hand, and everyone tried their best to soften their footsteps and slowly left. In the spacious office of the student council president, the silver-haired girl had already curled up on the chair and was fast asleep. They did not go far away. Instead, they gathered in another office of the student union. The members of the student union's picket team. They seemed to be discussing something. Principal Calvin is making more and more moves, especially the matter of replacing Song Lei. How can we let an inexperienced newbie take the field? What if he can't stop the impact? How big of an impact will it have on this world? Maybe he didn't even think about stopping the impact? A boy said faintly. What do you mean? The member of the picket team frowned. I'm just saying maybe. The boy shook his head insincerely. I heard that Principal Calvin has been getting close to the military recently. A girl suddenly said, Someone even saw that Calvin even visited the commander in the middle of the night. Someone saw it? The member of the picket team sighed. You saw it, right? After all, the commander is your uncle. The girl didn't say anything. Everyone in the room became silent. There seems to be a rumor among the higher-ups. At this moment, another boy in the corner suddenly said, The impact for us may not be an invasion. It's just that we have always thought so. In fact, the opposite side of the space impact is a civilization that wants to contact us. This isn't something new. The member of the picket team shook his head and said, After the first impact, this rumor already existed. Even now, there are still people in the dark. They even worship the emissary as a high-dimensional creature. You're saying that the mysterious organization that only exists in guesses. Dark World Battlefront. It's not a guess. I've already collected a lot of information. As long as we can find the key evidence. The member of the picket team shook his head. Just as he was about to continue, he suddenly waved his hand and said, In short, I'll continue to pay attention to this matter. Everyone, let's focus on the summer festival first. The president came back because of this. Everyone looked at each other. The member of the picket team said, Meeting dismissed, on the rooftop of the teaching building. What? You said you were kissed by him? Yulia jumped up on the spot. Her face was filled with disbelief. If she wasn't sure that Meshi was actually an honest person, she would have slapped her to wake her up. That Jew. Perhaps it was the boss's projection. After clearing so many page worlds, Yulia had never seen the boss's projection so active. No, it wasn't a real kiss. It was another kind of kiss. Meshi stammered. It was my appearance. M.O. what? Senior sister Yulia couldn't help but blink her eyes. Last night, when Meshi came back from the shopping center, she happened to see standing alone in front of a promotional screen. On the screen was the news of the battle of the 99th Impact. That battle was completed by Kurlit, driven by Meshi. However, what surprised Meshi was that when her appearance appeared on the screen, I don't know why it turned out like this. When I saw his face on the screen, I felt my own face burning up. His lips were almost. Yulia couldn't help but gulp. She felt like her body was about to split open. If it were someone else, I would have taught them a lesson. Meishi smiled bitterly. It's obviously a disgusting behavior. But last night, I don't know why, but when I saw Juju's appearance, I felt, how could there be such a beautiful person in the world, something like that? F*CK? Which F*King ancient shoujo manga was this plot from? Yulia frowned. Then, Ju left after a while. Meishi said in a low voice. I waited for a while before coming back quietly. When I came back, I didn't dare to make any noise. I've been thinking about it since last night. Hey, stop Meishi's relationship. Men in the world are all perverts, and women are true love. If you succeed, Meishi's affection will increase by 50, and you'll unlock the achievement, orange and orange. B. Help Meishi's relationship. If you succeed in your confession, Meishi's affection will increase by 100, and you'll become her best friend who can play private games with her. You'll unlock the side quest threesome. Seeing Meishi's distressed appearance, the option that was temporarily ignored by Yulia appeared again. If you ignore the option for a while, you'll trigger a new option. But this time, you can only choose A or B. Maybe there's some misunderstanding between you. Yulia said with a serious expression, men in the world are all perverts. I think this Zhu has the body of a seductress, a peerless scumbag. Meishi, don't be tempted by men. I'm the only one who treats you the best. Come, I'll take you to expose this seductress's true colors. Without waiting for Meishi to react, Yulia directly grabbed Meishi's arm and rushed forward. Yulia took out the all-night device that the driving school gave to every student. Hey, senpai, where are you now? Are you with Zhu at the music room? What are you doing in the music room? I'm coming now. Don't go, wait for me. Yulia, should we calm down first? In the corridor leading to the music room, Meishi hesitantly shouted, I know you care about me a lot, but wouldn't it be a bit, since we're already here? Let's take a look. Yulia didn't mind if things got out of hand. If they really promoted this relationship, things would really get out of hand. What's that sound? Meishi listened thoughtfully. May, it's nothing. It should be the guy Shinji practicing the music score. I think he said he's going to be the piano player during the choir. Senior sister, Yulia, shook her head casually. Then, she blinked her eyes and said, where have I heard this song before? Wasn't this song? Yulia frowned and instantly sped up. After a while, she pushed open the door of the music room. Meishi followed closely behind. In the music room, Madanzo was sitting in front of the piano, and Zhu was leaning against the piano case. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Madanzo immediately stopped. Why are you looking for me in such a hurry? Madanzo asked curiously. Yulia directly picked up the music score and asked with a frown, What are you playing? Madanzo paused for a moment and then said tacitly, The music score for the choir. The student council president sent it over. You've seen her? Senior sister, Yulia asked subconsciously. Just a simple meeting? Madanzo nodded. Just. So, you came here for this? Yulia shook her head. No, I just came to tell you that Meishi and I are going shopping at the mall in front of the station tonight, and we might return to the dormitory very late. After saying that, the two of them exchanged another glance that was filled with information. Then, the senior immediately pulled Meishi, who was still in a daze, and left. Madanzo couldn't help but chuckle and looked at him. Did you have any special feelings when you saw this Meishi classmate today, after doing that kind of thing? Zhu shook his head gently. It's just a picture on the screen. Is there any special meaning? No. Then why did you ask me to do this? Zhu showed a puzzled expression. I just wanted to see if something would happen if you kissed another woman. But in order to give the matter some leeway, I did it in a roundabout way. Well, we just happened to run into each other last night. Didn't I tell you that if you want to study human behavior, you have to act according to human behavior? Metatro said seriously, last night's behavior is known as the behavior of an idiot among humans. It can easily trigger violent emotional fluctuations between members of the opposite sex. Zhu showed a dubious expression and said, Meishi's emotions were indeed a bit unstable just now. The way she looked at me was different from usual. If I directly press my face against hers, would the fluctuations be stronger? I can test it later. Huh? Madanzo couldn't help but blink. There seems to be something wrong. Dash. Ah. A shriek of surprise rang out. Madanzo subconsciously looked out of the window of the music room. At the same time, she heard Zhu whisper, "The smell of blood." Ah! The scream came from outside. Yulia and Meshi, who both had their own thoughts in the corridor, looked at each other. It seems to be from there. Meshi pointed at the teaching building on the other side. They walked out quickly. When they passed through the gap between the two buildings, they saw several crows flying away from the trees, and an ominous aura surrounded them. Many students had gathered in front of a classroom in the building. Yulia even saw Madanzo and Zhu in the crowd. "What's the situation?" Yulia asked directly. Madanzo shrugged. "Someone died inside. You can see for yourself." "Dead?" Yulia opened her mouth in shock. Then she rode on Madanzo's shoulders and looked inside. "I don't know how to curse this damn woman. Is she addicted to riding me? Even if angels don't have genders, they still have tempers. Okay?" In the classroom, a male student wearing a black uniform could be seen lying in a pool of blood, and there was a knife stabbed into the chest of this male student. The male student should have been extremely angry and frightened before he died. His eyes were wide open and his mouth was open, as if he was roaring. "Black uniform? Isn't he from the picket team?" Yulia said with her head lowered. Madanzo said in annoyance. "To be precise, he's a member of the picket team. Besides, I saw this guy in the student union president's office an hour ago." "So, you're the murderer?" Yulia clamped her legs together. "Why don't you go to heaven?" Madanzo rolled her eyes and was about to speak. At this moment, the crowd was pushed aside, and the picket team in black walked over with grim expressions. "Get out of the way. From now on, the scene is closed. Who discovered the body first?" End of chapter. Chapter 2251. The interrogation began. All the students at the scene were gathered in a conference room by the school's picket team. They started questioning the female student who found the body first. The interrogation process was isolated, and the people waiting didn't know what was going on inside, so they couldn't help but feel uneasy. Moreover, the person who died this time was a member of the picket team, a real power figure in the second Upper Capital Driving School Student Union. The students' uneasiness continued to ferment. Fortunately, because it was lunch break, the picket team immediately sealed off the scene, confiscated the students' communication devices, and cut off the communication channel. When the interrogation began, most of the students finished their lunch break and continued with their classes. However, the school gate was quietly closed, and the people from the second Upper Capital Defense Station, similar to the police, were already on their way. In the corner of the conference room, Yulia was silent. Because they were from the same class, they sat together and silently waited to be summoned for questioning. But then again, this student union has a lot of power. Can they conduct the interrogation themselves? Yulia broke the silence with a surprised expression. "The people from the defense station should be on their way." Meishi shook his head and said, "Regardless of the results of the investigation, this matter will eventually be handed over to the Ministry of Defense. Rather than saying that the Public Order Squad's interrogation is to find the murderer as soon as possible, it is better to say that they want to know as much as possible before the case is handed over." "I don't know what's going on inside," Yulia said casually. "No matter what the situation is, we just need to tell the truth," Meshi said comfortingly. "Besides, you can't openly eavesdrop, right?" "You're right." Yulia smiled. Then, she inadvertently threw an eraser on the ground. After it fell to the ground, the eraser began to roll on its own all the way out of the conference room. In the temporary interrogation room, the female student who found the body first was restlessly retelling what happened. Several members of the picket team looked gloomy. There was nothing suspicious in the goddess's narration. The girl just took advantage of a lunch break to come to a relatively quiet studio, intending to take a nap. Then, when she passed by the classroom of the murder scene, she found the picket committee member lying in a pool of blood. A member of the picket team hurriedly pushed open the door and entered. Everyone took a look and saw a female member of the picket team saying in a deep voice, "Continue the interrogation." She then looked at her two companions. "You two come with me." Outside the corridor, the picket team member who had hurried back quickly said, "We've checked the surveillance footage. There's only the part where the committee member entered the teaching building. The rest of the footage has disappeared." Disappear? The female picket team member couldn't help but frown. As the vice chairman of the picket team, after the chairman was killed, she naturally took over his authority temporarily. "What happened?" The male picket team member who came back from the investigation said, "After checking the operation records, the chairman temporarily turned off the surveillance around here before coming here. Then he died." "Why did he temporarily turn off the surveillance here?" The vice chairman subconsciously bit her nails. "Why did he come here quietly? What did he want to do originally? Since he deliberately turned off the surveillance, he probably wanted to do something that couldn't be discovered." The right-hand man thought at this time and said, "Maybe he wanted to do something that violated the school rules, or meet someone, or secretly arrange something. I just thought of something." At this time, another right-hand man suddenly said, "Do you still remember that the chairman didn't finish speaking at the small meeting earlier?" The vice chairman frowned. "You mean about the Dark World battlefront?" "Yes, I clearly remember that the chairman said he had collected a lot of information and only the key evidence was left. But he didn't say what it was. It seemed that he had some concerns." Then, 2 hours later, the chairman was found dead in the classroom. Could it be a coincidence? Don't jump to conclusions. The vice chairman shook her head. "In short, before the people from the Defense Department arrive, it is very likely that they have more information. This time, the chairman of the picket team died directly, and there is no way to cover it up casually. I'm afraid this is something that the principal will be very happy to see." "You mean Principal Calvin will use this to criticize the picket team?" The vice chairman didn't speak, but at this time, the communicator suddenly rang. She quickly picked it up and her face slightly changed. "Yes. I know, President. I'll do as you say." "A message from the president? What did she say?" Everyone looked at the vice chairman eagerly. The president said. The vice chairman said with a complicated expression, "If it is a murder case, let the professionals handle it. What the student union needs to do is to try not to let this matter affect the summer festival." At this time, the chairman of the picket team died directly, and there is no way to cover it up casually. I'm afraid this is something that the principal will be very happy to see. In the dim sports equipment room, which was very suitable for a PE teacher to press a female student on a wooden horse for in-depth communication, Madanzo Shinji and Senior Yulia were communicating with their mouths. In addition, there was a talking eraser here, and the words above came out from this talking eraser. It was imitating the tone of the female vice chairman of the picket team. The private interrogation of the picket team didn't last long. Before the interrogation of the people at the scene was finished, the people from the Defense Department of the 2nd Shanjing arrived and took over the murder case with the help of the school. These two fellows came to the sports equipment room to discuss in secret after completing their confessions. Dark World battlefront. What is this? Madanzo took out the smoking pipe and held it in its mouth. It felt that the pipe could be used again. I can summon a voiceover. Senior Yulia rolled her eyes. Madanzo blinked and said, "You have to report to Calvin every day, and he only told you this?" Senior Yulia thought for a while and said, "How about I transform into the appearance of the Saint of Freedom City tonight and beat him up to see if he is willing to talk?" Madanzo shook its head and pressed its finger on the eraser. After a few strange sounds, the eraser repeated the conversation that it secretly recorded. This eraser was created by Senior Yulia to have a recording function. Did you notice this? Madanzo pressed the eraser again. Senior Yulia frowned and said, "She said that the person who died this time is the chairman of the public order squad, and we can't fool him." "More than once?" "Yeah." Madanzo nodded. The two looked at each other. Senior Yulia thought for a while and said, "I'll visit the vice chairman tonight. I'll go to the deceased's house for a walk." Madanzo smiled. After a preliminary investigation, the people from the Defense Institute didn't suggest to lock down the entire driving school. They only locked down the area around the scene and sent people to guard it. The corpse was transferred to the headquarters of the Defense Institute for inspection. Everything was handled according to the normal procedures, and there were no special actions because of the identity of the deceased. Before school was over, the students finally learned about the incident. The campus's internal network exploded instantly, but those who should go home or go back to the dormitory still had to go back. At night, Meshi showed up in the Gong Gong activity room of the dormitory building. He saw that Zhu Zhu was standing in front of the vending machine at this time. Meshi looked a little hesitant and finally said hello. Zhu Zhu. Student, good evening. Do you want something to drink? Zhu Zhu asked with a smile. Huh? Zhu Zhu said. Shinji said that being generous to girls can increase their favorability. So what do you want to drink? I'll get it for you. Want to increase their favorability? My favorability? So what happened last night wasn't actually a misunderstanding? What should I do? Yulia isn't here. I'm so nervous. Don't mention it. I'm not used to drinking at night. Meshi waved her hand and took a deep breath to calm herself down. By the way, I haven't seen Shinji since I came back. He seems to have gone out. Zhu Zhu thought for a while and said, I wanted to finish the game with him, but I didn't find him. Speaking of which, Meshi couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment before subconsciously saying, after I came back, I didn't see Yulia. I wanted to call her over to try the mixed vegetable soup I just learned to make, but she didn't come even after I knocked for a long time. Sorry, I said some nonsense. It's okay. Zhu Zhu smiled casually and then turned to leave. Well, Zhu Zhu, Meshi gritted her teeth. Are you interested in my room? Your room? Zhu Zhu was a little surprised and stamped his feet. Meshi said, what I mean is there's too much mixed vegetable soup. I can't finish it alone. Have you had dinner? I see. Zhu Zhu thought for a while and said, then let's go. A black short-haired cat was squatting on a telephone pole, quietly looking at the pedestrians on the road. The lights on the road were turned on at intervals, and the brightness was very low, in order to save the electricity consumption in the second upper capital. Meshi is alone in the dormitory. Is it okay? The black short-haired cat's eyes suddenly lit up, and it muttered, You're finally back, vice chairman of the picket team. At this time, the black cat directly jumped down from the telephone pole and quickly jumped into a high wall. The house behind the wall was considered luxurious even in the second upper capital. After all, it was the house of the relative of the military commander of the second upper capital. The name of the vice chairman was Mi Lei, the niece of the military commander of the second upper capital. Her mother was the vice chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, and her father was a senior engineer in the military headquarters, mainly responsible for the development of the external weapon of the God Eater. With such an identity, Mi Lei could live like a princess. However, after being tested for the pilot qualification of the God Eater, she gave up the luxurious life and entered the pilot school. After returning home, Mi Lei came to the courtyard alone after dinner. Kitty? Beside the pond in the courtyard, a black cat was catching fish at this time. The girl soon found that this cat didn't seem to be afraid of strangers, so she picked it up. What's wrong with you? Are you hungry? Look for food. Come here. The girl stroked the black cat and walked into the house, ordering the servant at home. Is there any raw chicken breast at home? Bring me some. Yes, Mississippi. The servant just glanced at the stray cat with a look of disdain, and then went to get the food. The black cat didn't seem to be afraid of strangers at all. It directly jumped onto the sofa and began to lick its own legs. The servant hadn't come back yet, but a man and a woman walked into the living room together at this time. The woman was a little older, but she took good care of herself, with a shrewd and capable temperament. As for the man, he was wearing a set of scrolls, with many badges hanging in front of his chest. Mi Lei's expression changed slightly, and she hurriedly stood up. She put her hands together and lowered her head, saying, Mother, Uncle, good evening. The capable woman said directly, Mi Lei, your uncle came this time to ask you about the child in Aspulin's family. You have to tell him everything you know, don't hide anything. About Jamia, Mi Lei's expression changed slightly, and she said subconsciously, this matter has already reached Uncle so quickly. The man in the military uniform said seriously, Aspulin's family has close to 50% of the military supply of the second upper capital city. Their family's heir was killed. This is no small matter. His father just quarreled in my office. Millet smiled bitterly and said, I was wondering why the people from the defense station were doing everything according to procedure this time. It turns out that they didn't dare to do anything. I'm afraid they had already talked to the defense station before coming to find you, Uncle. So, can you tell me something, Millet? The man in the military uniform said seriously. Millet subconsciously glanced at her mother. The woman said calmly, If you have something to say, just say it. Do you think your uncle will harm you? Millet shook her head, wanting to say something, but hesitating. Finally, she said slowly, Uncle, Mother, have you heard of the Dark World battlefront? In the living room, the two people's expressions changed slightly. The man in the military uniform sat down, frowning and not saying anything. Then his eyes met with a black cat. However, he only treated the black cat as Millet's pet and didn't pay attention to it. Instead, he said in a low voice, You're saying that Jamia's death is related to the Dark World battlefront? What's going on? The black cat blinked and stared at the man in the military uniform in front of it. Isn't this the Bismarck commander from the Page World in the previous Holy Land mansion? Downstairs, from time to time, the woman's heartbroken sobs and the man's furious roars could be heard. Upstairs in the room, a certain Shinsi covered himself with a large blanket and secretly held a flashlight in his mouth, flipping through a diary. I often dream of another me. The world in the dream is so real. Gradually, I can't figure out which side is the real me. Perhaps the world I'm in now is actually the world after death, the world of God. God has placed me here. The Dark World battlefront must exist. I know, they must exist. For fighting against God, tomorrow, when I meet that fellow, I might be able to know the truth. Chapter 2252. A World After Death. After asking around, the two of them met on a human-shaped overpass not far from the student dormitory. To be specific, I suspect that it's a world after death created by God. Madanzo thought for a while and said, That's all we know from Jemiah's diary. The diary mentioned that he was supposed to come into contact with someone today, and then he would be able to confirm some things. Now that he's dead, does that mean the murderer is the mysterious person he was supposed to meet? Senior sister, Yulia, rubbed the bangs on her forehead and suddenly said, Maybe we can lure this mysterious person out again. How? Madanzo asked curiously. Senior, Yulia, narrowed her eyes and said, Wouldn't it be fine to continue using Jamia's identity? Although Jamia is dead, he has become a ghost on the internet, unable to resolve his resentment or something like that. You want to? Yulia patted her chest and said, How can a pilot school not have legendary plots? Just leave this to me. The two of them continued to discuss on the overpass for a while before heading back. By the way, when I was at Millie's house, I met Bismai, the one who was turned into a star and flew away in the last Page World. Yulia suddenly said, If this is a world after death, doesn't that mean that Bismai's final ending was also death? Madanzo frowned and said subconsciously, Then what does the Book of Gaia say? A dead person can write a diary? This was obviously contradictory. The two of them unknowingly fell silent on this question. Senior, there's one more thing. Yulia said seriously, the song on the score that the student council president gave you came from a music box. And this music box is the key to opening the heart of Leviathan. Meshi, I'm back. Did you miss me? The dormitory door was directly pushed open. After crazily raising favorability points for a period of time, Senior Yulia could now casually open Meshi's door without causing her to feel annoyed. However, when the door of the dormitory was pushed open, Senior Sister Yulia was stunned. Inside the room, Meshi was already leaning against the wall. She didn't know what to do. In front of Meshi, Juju lowered his head and buried his head between her neck and hair, sniffing and even stroking her earlobe. Perhaps something is about to happen between them. Senior Sister Yulia immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. F***CK. This progress is a little too fast. as expected of the little butter world with options. However, the sound of the door opening woke Meshi up. She directly pushed Zhu away, grabbed her collar with one hand, and rushed out of the room without thinking. May, in the end, Senior Yulia couldn't call out her name. At this time, Zhu looked a little regretful as he looked at his palm thoughtfully. After a while, he cast his gaze on Yulia. Does this count as ruining something good? At this time, Yulia said embarrassedly, next time when you guys lock the door first. I seem to have thought of something just now. Zhu suddenly frowned and then directly walked towards Yulia. Yulia blinked and quickly stepped back, but at this time, the door of the dormitory behind her closed automatically. She immediately retreated to the door and couldn't retreat anymore. At this time, Zhu was already in front of her, and she could smell his breath. Yulia's face couldn't help but show a strange and painful expression. This scene seems to be familiar. It's happening again? I seem to have thought of something, Zhu said again. Yulia was stunned, but at this time, Zhu's palm had already touched her cheek. Yulia immediately cursed in her heart. I refuse to harass a female employee in public like this. But as long as the important thing hasn't happened yet, I can still save it. What did you think of? Yulia's breathing gradually became faster, and her heart beat faster. She felt like she was jumping on the line between life and death. I don't know, maybe. Zhu shook his head, and the finger that was gently caressing Yulia's cheek had already touched her lips. Caressing. Her slightly dry lips gradually became rosy. Yulia's breathing sped up again. She was scared. What should I do? Should I pretend that I tried my best to resist this time? She hesitated in her heart. Your mind is in a mess. Zhu suddenly let go of his hand, as if he had lost interest. He shook his head and said, try again when you're calmer next time. How the F***CK can you be calm at a time like this? My pants are almost wet, and you're telling me this? Good night. Zhu left with a trace of disappointment. Yulia sat paralyzed at the door, feeling weak all over. After a while, she slowly sighed. I feel like my life is saved, she muttered. To study humans? In another dormitory room, Yulia stepped on Madanzo's bed, and a fruit knife was placed on its neck. This was what happened. When it was about to take a shower, this woman suddenly rushed in and pushed it to the bed without saying anything. It wanted to reject this simple and violent behavior, but then a knife was placed on its neck. Speak. What's wrong with that, Zhu? Are you going to speak or not? Heroine, let's talk nicely. I really can't satisfy your needs. Madanzo slowly moved the fruit knife away from its neck. Only then did Senior's sister, Yulia, snort lightly. Senior, I share information with you, right? I didn't hide anything from you, right? I was wrong. Madanzo sat up straight, looking ashamed. But you didn't say anything. Do you know that you almost caused me? Caused you what? You ruined my plan, Yulia said angrily. If you continue like this, I think it'll be difficult for us to continue our cooperation. Madanzo sighed and said, you know that I didn't hide certain things from you on purpose. I only did this because I needed to. For example, I didn't ask you how you conquered Meshi. How could it be the same? Senior's sister, Yulia, couldn't help but frown. However, when she saw Metatro's fearless expression, she could only swallow her anger and said unhappily, can you tell me now? Madanzo shrugged. Zhu didn't clearly explain its origin, and I only speculated based on the information of the options. As the messenger of Zero, this guy seemed to be interested in human behavior after descending. That's why I entered the pilot school. Currently, I'm mainly teaching Zhu knowledge to gain points. What the F***CK did you teach? All kinds of knowledge. Yulia rolled her eyes, and half of her anger dissipated. No, why did he not hide his identity as the messenger of Zero in front of you? Isn't it strange for you to get along like this? Madanzo said indifferently. He didn't take the initiative to talk about it, and I didn't take the initiative to ask. We're like drinking friends who happen to meet at a bar. maintaining a subtle tacit understanding. But once this subtle relationship is broken, this relationship will probably end naturally. Yulia pondered and didn't say anything. Madanzo's attitude was casual and calm at this time. Suddenly, Yulia said slowly, I found a task-like option on Meshi, but I can't get it now. Madanzo was stunned and said subconsciously, Tell me about it. It can promote her relationship with Zhu, but it can also destroy it. Madanzo said in shock, How can it be Meshi? Logically speaking, she shouldn't be this Page World's senior. I suddenly have an idea. Yulia said suddenly, the idea of taking the initiative to break into this Page World. Madanzo's expression froze. Yulia began to say this. Second upper capital pilot school. The murder of the picket team's chairman, Jamia, caused the teachers and students of the school to fall into a state of panic. Although the classes were not suspended, because of this, the students were no longer in the mood to study. Hey, did you hear? Senior Jamia's account on the school's network suddenly logged in. How is that possible? A personal account needs to be verified by the person's pupil to log in. Didn't Senior Jamia already? That's why. Ghost. Quickly log in and take a look. Jamia's profile picture will shed tears of blood. And this account even used blood red words to post in the chat room. Let me see. Don't think that if you kill me, no one will know about that matter. Even if I die, my will not disappear. I've already hidden everything I know in the school. There would be a day when someone would announce it to the world. I will wait for you in hell. Vice Chairman Millie. Millie. A picket team member in black hurriedly pushed open the door to the picket team's exclusive office, only to see that there were already several members standing in the office with solemn expressions. As for the vice chairman, Millie's expression was also solemn as she stared unblinkingly at the screen. You know about it? The picket team member who had hurried over subconsciously asked. Someone has stolen Jamia's account, Millie said in a low voice. But this action seems to be to lure someone out. To Millie, the most suspicious thing was obviously the internal department of the picket team, followed by the other departments of the student union. As the chairman of the picket team, Jamia did not have many good friends. Those who could talk to him were all in this office. But to log into the account required pupil verification, and the account was only logged in this morning using the school's internal network. And Jamia's corpse should have been taken away yesterday. Senior Millie, should we inform the people from the Defense Department about this matter? Millie shook her head and said, There's no need for us to inform them. Those fellows will know about it immediately. I'm afraid we can no longer interfere in this matter. What exactly did Jamia hide in the school? This is obviously set up by someone to lure out the murderer. The murderer won't be so stupid as to fall for it. Just then a call came. Not good. Senior Jamia's personal locker has been pried open by someone. Everyone exchanged glances. He really fell for it? The murderer didn't fall for it, but he really cared about what was written on the post. That's why he didn't hesitate to take the risk. Millie took a deep breath. In other words, Jamia really has some information in his hands. What could it be? Everyone's expression froze as they thought of the same thing at the same time. Dark World Battlefront. During the break between classes, Meshi suddenly disappeared, as if she was deliberately avoiding them. When they left in the morning, Meshi also left early. It was rare that she did not go with Yulia. Shinji, are you going to practice your music score today? Zhu asked with a smile. I'm afraid I can't. Madanzo shook her head. Yulia and I are in charge of cleaning up the trash today, so we can't accompany you. As she said that, she and Yulia quickly carried 2 bags of trash and walked out of the classroom. Zhu only glanced at them in confusion and didn't pay much attention. He walked to the window alone and stared at the campus in a daze. Suddenly, Zhu raised his head and looked at the rooftop of the teaching building opposite. Zhu smiled and even nodded at the rooftop of the teaching building in the distance. At the same time, on the rooftop of the opposite building, a telescope was slowly descending. It descended until it landed in a room in the building. In the room, the silver-haired president of the student council looked away from the telescope. I was discovered, the girl muttered and then shook her head. She reached out and pressed a button on the desk. Fried chicken steak, spicy. Okay, President, the food you want will be here in 5 minutes. The girl nodded seriously. I'm looking forward to it. So, is this really effective? In a corner of the campus, Madanzo looked at the secret weapon in her senior's hand with interest. It was a Xing Chuang laptop. End of chapter.